Senate will come to order. Those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. Those in the gallery and those on the floor will please rise as we're led in prayer by the senior senator from the 6th. Please remain standing after the prayer as the junior senator from the 8th that leads us in reciting the pledges of allegiance. Senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let us bow our heads. Dear Lord, thank you for letting us gather here today. Please be with us all. Help guide us and put this state in the direction that suits you best. Please be with the sick and afflicted and the shut-ins. Please be with all our agencies and the decisions they make every day. Be with our leadership to help guide them on this tricky course. Please continue to bless and forgive us of our sins. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Senator.
Mr. President, would our friends in the gallery and everyone join us in pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading of the journal.
West Virginia Legislature, Senate Journal, February 9th, 2023. The Senate met at 11 a.m. Senator Blair, Mr. President, in the chair.
Senator from Cabell requests unanimous consent to further reading the journals dispensed with and the journal be approved. All right. To the senior senator from the 4th request unanimous consent. The further reading the journals dispensed with and the journal be approved. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Further reading the journals dispensed with and the journal is approved. Introduction of guest, Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure and yours to welcome the doc of the day. Today's doc is Dr. Jessica McCauley. She comes to us from Bell. Thank you.
Further introductions, Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of myself, the senior senator for Summers County, and all the senators in the chamber, we have a very important act today. It's called the Cassie Marie Johnson Memorial Act, and her mother, Cheryl, and her sister Chelsea is in your gallery, along with the law enforcement family. So I ask that they all stand and that the chamber make them welcome.
Are there further introductions? Senator from Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is my pleasure to recognize the profession of dental hygiene. We're joined by members from the West Virginia Dental Hygiene Association Executive Board, along with students and faculty from the state's 3 dental hygiene programs of Bridge Valley Community and Technical College, West Liberty University, and West Virginia University. The students joining us up in the North Gallery, and the faculty are Lauren French, Ashley Snouds, Amanda Jones, Carly Scalia, Robin Mills, Jana Thornsberry, Gina Sharps, Cindy Shockery, Dawn Ann Dean, Liz Perez, Anna Lopez, Dalton Cork, Josie West, Chloe Fox, Leanne Bennett, Lauren Burnside, Sophia Caramolos, and Mackenzie Wenzel. And I'd ask the Senate to make them feel welcome, and I am sorry for any names I messed up. I apologize. Senate, please make them feel welcome.
Welcome to my world. Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 2002 relating to providing support for families.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources, then the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2346, declaring a shortage of qualified bus operators and allowing retired bus operators to accept employment.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Education, then the Committee on Finance.
House Bill 2548, relating to temporary identification cards for released inmates.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary, then the Committee on Finance.
House Bill 2599, creating the Utility Pole Rights-of-Way and Easement Mapping Initiative.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Economic Development, then the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2762, allowing variance in state fire code for certain buildings used solely for emergency equipment storage.
Message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government and Organization.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2845, relating to removing expired provisions from the code.
Message will be received, and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources. Excuse me.
House Bill 2967, expediting license applications for active military members and veterans and their spouses.
Message will be received, and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Military.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3036, increasing the number of districts and the limit on approved costs under the West Virginia Build Act.
Message will be received, and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Economic Development and then the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3077, relating to making the use of the multi-state real-time tracking system permanent.
Message will be received, and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3164 to extend the termination date of the West Virginia Advisory Council on Rare Diseases due to a delay in beginning its duties.
Message will be received, and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3191, relating to certain facilities operated by the state government to obtain a license.
Message will be received, and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources. Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Energy, Industry, and Mining has had under consideration Senate Bill 168, providing exemption from state severance tax for coal sold to coal-fired power plants located in West Virginia, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Randy E. Smith, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 213, relating to responsibility for reimbursement of training cost and law enforcement employees who leave original jurisdiction, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Jack David Woodrum, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 268, relating to PEIA, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but with the further recommendation that it first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
Report will be received. Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent that the bill be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senate Bill 268 will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 467, providing county commissioners ongoing mechanism to consider compensation increases for elected officials every 2 years, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Jack David Woodrum, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Senate Bill 522, allocating percentage of county excise taxes for funding improvements to election administration, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but with the further recommendation that it first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Jack David Woodrum, Chair.
Report will be received. Senior Senator from, the Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that Senate Bill 522 be referred to your Committee on Finance.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senate Bill 522 will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 543, authorizing rulemaking changes to terms, procedures, and reporting duties in higher education, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Amy N. Grady, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2412, declaring November 14th every year a special Memorial Day in remembrance of the Marshall University airplane crash, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Jack David Woodrum, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 3055 to create a vocational math class for students interested in careers in the trades, and has amended same, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Amy N. Grady, Chair.
Report will be received. Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction to bills. Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 600 through Senate Bill 606 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
Senator from Brooke requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill 600 through Senate Bill 606 be considered and introduced, read by their titles, referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 11 by Senator Woodrum naming the U.S. Army Sergeant Brian Christopher Karim Memorial Bridge.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 29 by Senators Boley, Blair, Mr. President, Azinger, Barrett, Chapman, Clements, Deeds, Grady, Hamilton, Hunt, Jeffries, Carnes, Monroney, Maynard, Nelson, Oliverio, Plymel, Queen, Roberts, Smith, Stewart, Takubo, Tarr, Taylor, Trump, Weld, and Woodrum, strongly encouraging Monongalia Power Company to purchase Pleasance Power Station.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Motions. Petitions.
There are none.
Unfinished business.
There is none.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed Senate Bill 234, clarifying uniform statewide deadline for electronically submitted voter registration applications. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 234 changes the deadline for the electronic filing of voter registrations, name changes, or political party affiliation changes from no later than the close of business on the final day of registration to 11:59 p.m. on the final day of registration. I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senator from Brooke.
I move that the bill be made effective on passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senator from Brooke moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed revised committee substitute for Senate Bill 250, requiring certain drivers display student driver sign on rear vehicle. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Wetzel.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill modifies the terms and conditions of the first 2 licenses in the graduated driver's license program by requiring that these novice drivers to display a student driver sign while driving. The purpose of the bill is to increase safety. A sign would allow others on the road to become aware that an inexperienced driver is present and allow folks to exercise more caution and tolerance. Requiring a student driver sign would also aid in the enforcement of the other restriction on novice drivers that are designed to promote safety. Current law provides that violations of restrictions in the graduated driver's license program are subject to a fine. This bill provides that if a student driver violates the sign requirement, and that is the only violation and first violation, then the driver would be exempt from the payment of additional court-related costs and fees. The bill provides that the sign requirement sunsets in 5 years unless it is extended. I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 28 yeas, 3 nays, 3 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be made effective July 1, 2023, and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senator from Brooke moves the bill be made effective July 1, 2023, and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 28 yeas, 3 nays, 3 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective July 1, 2023. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 302 relating to Law Enforcement Safety Act. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 302 would require law enforcement agencies in West Virginia to index felony warrants with the National Crime Information Center, NCIC. The state police and several other agencies voluntarily index warrants with NCIC, but not all agencies do. Mandating all law enforcement agencies to index warrants with NCIC will help enhance officer safety and is supported by law enforcement agencies. I'm happy to answer questions, but otherwise urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 472 creating criminal offense of indecent exposure in front of minors.
Senator from Brooke.
President, request unanimous consent that the bill lie over 1 day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 484 clarifying terms and offense of human smuggling. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 484 would amend our state code by adding to it one new section. And the new section would be designated as Chapter 61, Article 10, Section 35, defining the new offense of human smuggling. We already have in our law pretty substantial penalties for an offense defined as human trafficking. The difference between the two is worth just a moment of illumination. With respect to human trafficking, you're generally talking about people who are moved or taken or trafficked involuntarily. With human smuggling, that's not necessarily the case. Mr. President, in West Virginia and throughout this country, sadly, people are paying to have coyotes bring them across our southern border and paying to be moved illegally to places within this country. That is the offense that this bill is designed to address. It is going to be a felony offense. And it says that if the person smuggled is an adult, it's a prison sentence of from 1 to 5 years. If the person smuggled is a minor child, and that goes on. Mr. President, police officers around this country in West Virginia are on occasion stopping vehicles, tractor and trailers, and finding them filled with people, human beings who are being smuggled here illegally in the United States. So if you smuggle a minor, it's a more stout sentence. It's 2 to 10 years. There are big fines as to both. Mr. President, I'll be happy to try to answer. I should add one other thing. The bill also makes clear that there's language saying that you can't stop or detain somebody just on the basis of his or her race or ethnic origin. Be happy to try to answer questions. I urge passage of this bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I wish to thank the chairman for running this very important piece of legislation. I have to tell you that it is so distressing that there are people who will take advantage of others and participate in human smuggling. And a lot of the victims of this, they pay to be smuggled, but they believe they're being taken someplace where they're going to be a good paying job for them. And instead, very often, they are trafficked. And they are taken someplace where they are detained, put where they can't escape, and abused over and over again. This is a very important bill that will help our law enforcement help these individuals, and I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results on this question. 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 490, Patrol Officer Cassie Marie Johnson Memorial Act. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 490 is designated within the bill as the Cassie Johnson Memorial Act. The bill would amend our state code by adding one single new section to it, one section. And it's in Chapter 61, Article 5, which is crimes against public justice. Article 5 contains crimes against public justice. The new section is would be designated as Section 17A. And again, the law is referred to as the full title, Mr. President, is the Patrol Officer Cassie Marie Johnson Memorial Act. It's a very important bill. And this bill makes a very important statement in West Virginia, not just for Cassie Johnson, but for the others who work in the same dangerous job that she did and other similar jobs. And most importantly, it's a statement and policy in the bill that addresses how this state, going forward, is going to deal with people who would interfere unlawfully with people like Cassie Johnson, who are simply trying to do their job, to protect us, to protect and serve the citizens of their communities, their counties. So let me talk a little bit briefly about what the bill does. It provides that any person who knowingly and willfully obstructs a law enforcement officer, a probation officer, a parole officer, a courthouse security officer, a correctional officer, a state fire marshal, a deputy or assistant fire marshal, a firefighter, or an emergency medical service personnel, all those people who devote their lives to looking out for all of us, taking care of our families, the citizens of this state. Any person who obstructs any of those people, while that person is acting lawfully in the course of the performance of his or her duties, her official capacity, and thereby approximately causes the death of a law enforcement officer, a probation officer, a parole officer, a courthouse security officer, a correctional officer, the state fire marshal, a deputy or assistant fire marshal, a firefighter, or emergency medical service personnel so acting. Anyone who does that and it causes the death is guilty of a felony, and upon conviction is going to be imprisoned in a state correctional facility for a term of 15 years to life. That's the penalty we apply in our law now for murder. There's an important distinction here, because what this bill says, if you do that, if you create an obstruction, if you obstruct the police or emergency personnel and it goes sideways and causes a death, we're not going to require the state to prove the elements, traditional elements of murder, which include premeditation, malice. The word going forth now, once this becomes law in West Virginia, is if you do it, we're not going to hear you in court say, I didn't mean for anybody to die. Doesn't matter. The consequences are yours, and you will be treated under the law as if you planned and intended that death and go to prison for 15 years to life. It sends a strong and important message, Mr. President, in my opinion. You know, I think by and large in West Virginia, the citizens of the state admire and respect our police and the others who serve us in those, critical emergency capacities. But around the country, their jobs have always been hard. It's never been an easy job. It's always been a dangerous job. It's always been a risky job. But more and more, it gets riskier and riskier. And police officers that I've talked to, and I'm sure everybody in this chamber have talked to, have said to me, every year it gets more difficult because more and more people are in our faces. They're not complying. We give lawful orders. We're doing our job. We're following the law. We're trying to enforce the law. And more, we get pushback from people. And we've seen, not here in West Virginia, thank goodness, Mr. President, but around this country, movements of defunding the police. Those things are unbelievable to me when I see that. And I'm glad to say I haven't seen that here in West Virginia. I think the citizens of this state, as I said, admire the police, respect the police, and those other emergency personnel who do dangerous and risky and important jobs for the benefit of the state. But we can't look back and see what happened to Patrolman Cassie Johnson and others and think that there aren't people, because there are, who are willing to just be disobedient, non-compliant, don't care whether it goes sideways, don't care whether people get hurt or killed. The message this bill sends, Mr. President, is not here in West Virginia. You don't get to do that. The people here, starting with the sponsors of this bill and the West Virginia Senate, stand behind our law enforcement officers and all those who serve us in those capacities. Mr. President, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions about the bill or its contents. I urge its passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members of the Senate, today it is my honor to stand before you to advocate for the passage of Senate Bill 490. It's commonly called the Patrol Officer Cassie Marie Johnson Memorial Act. This act makes it a felony for any person who knowingly and willfully obstructs a first responder acting in his or her official capacity and thereby causes the death of the first responder. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it is important for us to review the circumstances which were a catalyst for this most important legislation. Patrol Officer Johnson was in her second year of service to the citizens of Charleston and this great state, and had recently been assigned to her home precinct, her home area. Cassie proudly wore the navy blue uniform and silver badge of the Charleston Police Department. Patrol Officer Johnson represented the best of West Virginia, as she humbly carried out her duties. Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, began as a routine day for Patrol Officer Johnson. At 2:30 p.m., in the middle of the day, she responded to a parking complaint, a simple parking complaint, at the 200 block of Garrison Avenue. As Patrol Officer Johnson approached a male subject to just request him to move his vehicle, she was confronted with a weapon and gunfire was exchanged. Patrol Officer Johnson was fatally wounded. Patrol Officer Cassie Marie Johnson gave a full measure of devotion and dedication to the citizens of West Virginia. Cassie fulfilled the great scripture as written in John 15:13, where it states, "Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for their friends." Mr. President and members of this esteemed Senate, the Patrol Officer Cassie Marie Johnson Memorial Act will echo throughout eternity the love and support all true mountaineers have for our first responders. Our law enforcement, our firefighters, our emergency medical personnel, they go places where we fear to go. They do heroic deeds which we cannot do. They are the thin line which guarantee law and order in our great state and in our world. Together, they courageously run toward the battle between good and evil for our freedom. The very least we can do as honorable members of this assembly is to cast our vote in support of this most important legislation. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to advocate for this bill. I urge its passage.
Some further discussion? If not, question for the Senate, this shall the bill pass. All those in favor vote yea, those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent that the remarks by the Senator from Morgan and Senator from Greenbrier on Senate Bill 490 be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed Senate Bill 493, exempting West Virginia veterans from certain fees and charges at state parks. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage to bill. Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 493 adds a new section to the code, which would be Chapter 20 in Article 5, Section 23, which directs the Department of Natural Resources to develop a plan that allows for free visitor passes for state parks and state forests for West Virginia veterans. And hopefully at this time next year, we'll be back approving that plan either in legislation or in a rule. I urge passage of the bill. Thank you.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 515, clarifying deadline to file annual report for companies authorized to do business in West Virginia. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 515 would amend and reenact a single section of the state code. It is a section in Chapter 59, Article 1. It's Section 2A. And the committee substitute changes a business entity's annual report and fee deadlines from July 1 to June 30th. The proposed change makes the code provision consistent with other provisions in the state code. It further gives the Secretary of State the ability to assess bad check fee in the event an individual account number, an invalid account number is provided. The Secretary of State's also authorized under this bill, Mr. President, to waive new business registration fees at up to 3 state entrepreneurship events and conferences, and this provision would be effective March 31 of this year. The new language also provides that non-governmental entities offering to make annual report filing with the West Virginia Secretary of State on behalf of the West Virginia business entity, and doing so in a solicitation via mail, email, or facsimile, are required to do a number of new things. And I won't read them all, it's Friday, but I would say just generally, this is designed, we've all gotten them, I think, to get at those people that are send out those sort of scam things that will, they look like they're from the government, but they're not. They're not from the Secretary of State. They're from somebody trying to scam people. And when there's a filing cost of $25, they send something that looks like it's from the government and says, send us $140 and we'll get your required registration taken care of. So this is designed to get at that with requirements for any of those companies that do business in West Virginia. Mr. President, I'd be happy to try to answer questions. I urge passage of Senate Bill 515.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 529, allowing businesses to register as limited liability limited partnerships. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very simple bill. It amends one section of our state code. It's in Chapter 47B, Article 10, which is our Limited Liability Partnership Act. This bill just requires the use of the words registered limited liability, registered limited liability limited partnership, the initials LLLP, and that can be with or without periods as a suffix in the name. This bill comes from, I think, the agency, the Secretary of State. I'd be happy to try to answer questions. I urge the bill's passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 532, Sex Offender Registration Act. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 532 amends, one section, existing section of code. That's Chapter 15, Article 12, Section 2. It amends and reenacts a section of code in Chapter 49, Article 6. That's Section 609. And it adds a new section to the code that goes in Chapter 61. That's our criminal offenses, Article 8, which are crimes against chastity, morality, and decency. And it adds a new section. It would be designated as Section 32. The purpose of the bill is to create a new felony offense for soliciting a minor for sexual activity. We have law in our books right now in the code that makes soliciting any person for sex a crime, but it's a misdemeanor, Mr. President. And I'm embarrassed to admit that I didn't know until it was brought to my attention by the chief sponsor of this bill, the junior senator from the 8th that we don't have a separate offense for soliciting a minor for sex, and that he made the point, and he is correct, that it should be a felony to do that. And so that's what this bill would do. It says if a person is 18 years of age or older and at least 4 years or more older than a minor, that solicitation for sexual activity constitutes a felony. The penalty would be 2 to 10 years, fine of up to $5,000 for a first offense. Penalties go higher for subsequent offenses, and makes clear that any person convicted of such offense has to register, has to be registered as a sex offender. Mr. President, I will, one other provision I should mention. It says that the law says that the offender has custodial or visitation or other parental rights as to the victim. He or she will be designated as an abusive parent, which would mean, could mean the loss of those parental or visitation rights. Mr. President, happy to try to answer questions about the bill. I urge its passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Junior Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a bill that I've worked on for several years as a member of the House. The last session I was in the House, it did pass the House, but it failed to pass the Senate. It passed close to the end of the session, and there just wasn't time to take it up. I worked on those years, I think this was 2014 and 15, with an FBI task force, and actually the bureau chief was head of the task force, and his goal, as well as there was a Charleston police officer and there was a Kanawha County sheriff on the task force, their goal was to fill loopholes in our law as they relate to violent crimes and crimes against children. We corrected all the loopholes in the law except this one. As the distinguished chairman from Judiciary just said, if you solicit a 40-year-old prostitute for sex, it's a misdemeanor. If you solicit a child on the playground for sex, it's a misdemeanor. The problem with that is the FBI have statistics showing that if those individuals are not successful the first time, there's almost a 100% chance that they will eventually be successful. And of course, those are the kids whose faces turn up on milk cartons. So this is a needed change. This gives our prosecutors another tool to handle people who commit serious crimes or have the intention of committing serious crimes against our children. This is another tool to keep our children safe. Urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 533 relating to limitations on motor vehicle used by nonprofit cooperative recycling associations. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is relating to limitations on motor vehicles used by a nonprofit cooperative recycling association. The bill amends a section of Code 19-4-1 in the Cooperative Association article to allow reporting cooperatives to own more than one vehicle to collect and transport recyclable materials. The current law only allows one vehicle. I'd be happy to answer any questions and urge the Senate's support. Thank you, sir.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Junior Senator from 17.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this bill and do appreciate the chairman and his committee putting this forward. The origin of this bill comes from here in Kanawha County. And we have a very active recycling program that's promoted by the city. However, one item that they do not pick up is glass. And we have a particular person that over the last couple years has taken it upon herself and others to go out and pick up glass and handle that herself. This has grown, but she's limited because there's only one vehicle according to code. So this bill will basically take that one vehicle limit away and allow her to have, her or others to have more vehicles to supply or provide recycling. Mr. President, thank you for the time, and I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine, ascertain the results. On this question, 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 2602, reestablishing certain specialized school service personnel classifications. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill simply corrects an error. During the 2021 regular session, the legislature passed House Bill 2145 and an amended Chapter 18A, Article 4, Section 8 that added definitions for four new classifications of service personnel. And during the next regular session in 2022, the legislature passed another bill that amended the same code to redefine certain school cafeteria personnel. Unfortunately, when House Bill 4829 in 2022 was when it was passed, it had drafted to an outdated version of the code section that was used that did not include the definitions from the previous year. So this bill actually corrects that error. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. President. I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine, ascertain the results. On this question, 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be made effective for passage and request for unanimous consent. The roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senator from Brooke moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 31 yeas, 0 nays, 3 absent not voting. More than two-thirds of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions to the House, the Senate to the House. Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 47, creating charter school stimulus fund. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 187, making it a felony offense for school employee or volunteer to engage in sexual contact with students. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 237, relating to public employees' retirement system and state teachers' retirement system. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Pensions moved to amend the bill on page 2, section 22N.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the way of background, Senate Bill 237 is the work of your Joint Pensions Committee over this past year to do something for our older retirees that have additional years of service to the state. This particular bill is a two-part enhancement to certain retirees. The first part is a $1,500 payment to retirees of both the PERS and the TERS system that are of age 70, have a minimum of 20 years of service, and currently do not receive $1,000 a month. The second component of this bill basically is for the same retirees that have obtained the age of 70 with at least 25 years of service that are receiving under $1,000 a month, bringing their minimum payment up to $1,000. What this particular amendment does is corrects something that we did in the original bill that required the retirement board to make changes in a manner that would cause some administrative difficulty. This amendment simply states that the board has until December 31st of this year or earlier to effectuate the increases described earlier. Happy to answer any questions, and I urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there discussion? If not, question for the Senate is adoption of the amendment offered by the Committee on Pensions. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 290 relating to dental health care service plans. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 441 removing additional 1.5% interest rate for tax underpayments.
Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill lay over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Senate Bill 487 extending additional modification reducing federal adjusted gross income. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 505 supplementing and amending appropriations to Department of Administration, Office of Secretary. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 508 clarifying reporting and disclosure requirements for grassroots lobbying expenditures. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 516 relating to requirements for disclosure of donor contributions. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 527 allowing family members of military personnel access to discharge records. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Engrossed House Bill 2310 provide the Division of Motor Vehicles authority to develop an antique fleet program that multiple antique motor vehicles may utilize a single registration plate.
Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent that the bill lay over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 3061 relating to updating the authority of the foster care ombudsman.
Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent that the bill lay over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Bills on first reading. Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sure that some of us in the room see me stand up on a Friday to make remarks and think, oh my, oh my. We'll be traveling home and ending the week soon. It's been an amazing week. We passed important legislation virtually every day this week. But I do want to mention something that I hope we can all think about over the weekend. Because over this weekend, on Sunday, to be precise, Mr. President, there'll be a birthday celebrated. Sunday is February 12th. We won't be here in session on the day of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. So I want to talk a little bit today about Abraham Lincoln. And I hope that we'll think about him over the weekend. In the time of Lincoln's election and presidency, the inauguration of the president didn't occur in January the way it does now. That was a constitutional change that occurred later. It was March. You know, Lincoln was elected in 1860, but it was March of 1861 before he was inaugurated as the president, 16th president of the United States. And in those intervening months, extraordinary things happened in this country. States passed ordinances and resolutions of secession and left the Union. I like to think, and when we're in the midst of our deepest, most frustrating fights and struggles here in the early 21st century in the legislature, we have it so easy, comparatively speaking, with what this country and what Mr. Lincoln dealt with in the middle of the 19th century. By the time he took his oath of office, all the southern states had left the Union, announced they would no longer be part of the United States of America. We honor and revere Abraham Lincoln because he's the author of our statehood. He signed the bill creating West Virginia as the 35th state of the Union. And on this side of the chamber, we hold him in special reverence because he's the first Republican president in the nation's history. He didn't found the Republican Party, but he was the first Republican president of the United States, and he set the standard to which all of us who followed in that political party should and do aspire. We revere Lincoln because he authored and signed the Emancipation Proclamation, liberating slaves in all the states that were in rebellion against the United States of America, liberating them from the bonds of slavery. When he took his first oath of office, when he was inaugurated in March 4th to be precise, of 1861, as said, southern states had cast their die, said they were leaving the United States. His election was that controversial in those places. I'm an enormous fan of Mr. Lincoln and his writings, and as people who've been here for any length of time know. But his address at Gettysburg, his first inaugural address, and his second inaugural address are among the greatest writings, in my opinion, ever in the history of the English language. And so as we hopefully prepare to think about Mr. Lincoln a little bit on Sunday, Mr. President, I want to give you just a little bit of his address at the moment of his first inauguration, March 4th, 1861, as President of the United States, with the whole nation as tense as it's ever been, Mr. President, on the verge of civil war. No one knew exactly what that would look like. We found out, it would be, through the course of those 4 years, millions and millions of Americans lost their lives. No one knew at the outset how horrific that would be, but everyone knew at some level it would be horrific. And with his words to the nation, and in particular to the people of the southern states of the nation, he sought to avert it, and he implored everyone to just take time. Take time. Let me read to you how he said it, and I hope you'll agree with me that it's among the most beautiful passages in any political speech, certainly, that's ever been rendered. My countrymen, one and all, think calmly and well upon this whole subject. Nothing valuable can be lost by taking time. If there be an object to hurry any of you in hot haste to a step which you would never take deliberately, that object will be frustrated by taking time. But no good object can be frustrated by it. Such of you as are now dissatisfied still have the old Constitution unimpaired, and on the sensitive point, the laws of your own framing under it. While the new administration will have no immediate power, if it would, to change either, if it were admitted that you who are dissatisfied hold the right side in this dispute, there still is no single good reason for a precipitate action. Intelligence, patriotism, Christianity, and a firm reliance on Him, capital H, Him, who has never yet forsaken this favored land, are still competent to adjust in the best way all our present difficulty. In your hands, my dissatisfied countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. This government will not assail you. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors. You have no oath registered in heaven to destroy the government, while I have the most solemn one to preserve, protect, and defend it. I'm loath to close. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union. When we are touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. That was the end of President Lincoln's first inaugural address. Thank you for indulging me. Let's think also, when we think about Cassie Johnson, and let's think also a little bit on Sunday about Abraham Lincoln. Thank you.
Senior Senator from the 5th.
Requesting and consent that the remarks by the Senator from Morgan be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Further remarks by members. Senior Senator from the 5th.
There's only one thing that I take from, I've heard many speeches from the Senator from Morgan about Abraham Lincoln. This is the first time that I'll have to say that I'm going to have to add something to it. People on this side of the chamber do revere him as well. Thank you.
Senior Senator from the Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the affirmation by the Senator from the 5th be printed in the appendix to the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. After hearing the Senator from Morgan throw around dates, it made me realize that today is my parents' 61st wedding anniversary. My dad is 84, my mom's 81. They're probably not watching right now because they're probably accomplishing some task. They've been such an inspiration to me and, guiding me throughout the years. They give me advice even today. They'll say, there'll be some controversial topic up there, and my mom will say, Mark, don't get involved with that, But they've just been my rock, and just wanted to let everyone know that I'm thinking about them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? Miscellaneous business. Senator from Brooke.
Mr. President, subject to announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until Monday at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements?
I am good to my promise, folks. I have something that was written out to accommodate the fact that last night was a sort of a long and exhausting night, and the alarm went off in Bluefield this morning at 5 a.m. to return. So I'm going to put on my glasses. I'm not going to read to you, but I am going to have this in my hand so I can remember where I am. Initially, I want to say something here to all of you that you may never have heard on this floor before. On occasion, only on occasion, I can be wrong. It happens on occasion. I hope in this particular instance that I am. I hope I'm wrong, because I can be, and I don't know it all. However, I do have opinions on things, and if you'll indulge me for just a moment to tell a quick little story. When I was a young person, I took a job as a sales executive, and I almost immediately endeared myself to a very large national retailer. We got to be friends. They invited me in. I got to know their products. And every year they would invite me to take part in the pricing of their products, hopefully to do business with this company. They were great people, and they invited me in, and we got enthusiastic, and we put together a great package, and every year I lost. Didn't get to work. We were friends, but I didn't get to work. 5 years in a row, I priced this package. A lot of work, ton of money. Didn't get to work. The 6th year, though, however, a couple months after I supplied the pricing package, I got a call. And the call was that the folks that did get the work had completely gone under, had filed for bankruptcy and dissolution, and had left them hanging on a number of store openings, retail, very large box store openings, that they couldn't supply. And they wanted to know if I could do the work at the prices that I had gave them. And we did. And for the next 18 years, I supplied that company with product, installation. Great relationship. I did it until the company that I worked for was sold. Never once in that 18 years, when I supplied them a pricing package, did I have the low price. Never once. However, they did get a solid deal from a reliable supplier that could produce what they need and stay in business. That's somewhat what we're looking at with this supplemental. Sometimes we want to open the cookie jar and just make the deal. Big companies, we want them here in West Virginia. Lord, I want them here in West Virginia. I like doing big business. I like making money. I like being successful. But sometimes when you open the lid to that cookie jar too much, everybody takes everything out of it, and there's nothing left for the important things that need to be done. In the case of that company, and I've uttered their name since then, hadn't even thought about their name until I started to put this together. There's nothing left. They went out. Now, we're not going bankrupt, folks, but we do need to have dollars that are available. We do need to leave something in the cookie jar. We're giving away $290 million with a guaranteed payback of $30 million. The $30 million is rent that's part of this deal. So there's a $260 million giveaway, and our only security is in a property. It's in a property that has been vacant for 12 years. Now, we're going to have a building on it. I'll certainly put that together, but that's our security. It's a building that's specific to this particular industry. And that security goes away in 5 years. It goes away in 5 years. If these folks do what they do and aren't successful, but they're able to do it long enough to make it 5 years, we have no security. We have given a startup company $260 million. Now, I recognize that there's some star power. The gentleman alluded to the investors in this company, and they've raised about $900 million in private capital, but none of that is pledged as security. None of that private capital is pledged as security here. I also understand that this company has about $1.5 billion in orders, and man, that sounds great. It does sound great, but they don't have any sales. I'm not an accounting guy, but sales are when you have manufactured a product, you've delivered a product, and you've been paid for a product. It's not happened here. It's not happened. You couldn't take these orders, I would imagine. My friend here's a commercial banker. He would tell you, I would think. But I doubt seriously that you could take these orders to a bank and borrow any money against them because they've never produced the product in question before. A banker that would do that would be undertaking a pretty risky venture. Now, my little company, and it is a little company, but on occasion I have needed to borrow money to finance a project or two, and I have a contract, an order, and I can take that down to my local bank, nowhere near in the dollar amounts we're talking about here, but I can take it down to my local bank and say, hey, I have a contract to produce this product. I've been in business for a few years. I've produced it before. I need to borrow some money, and they will lend me money against that contract. Can't happen here, I don't think. I'm not a banker, but I don't believe that any responsible lender would do that. They're not proven. They're a startup. We're giving $260 million to a startup. Now, another issue we can talk about, we talked about this yesterday, so I won't go on too much about it, but when we put these dollars into this project, we are taking them off the table as a backstop for what everybody in this chamber wants, and that is to reduce the tax burden on West Virginians. We're engaged in a negotiation with the body on the other end of the hall, and one of their objections is that our project is our tax cuts are too expensive, that we don't have the ability to accommodate them. If something goes wrong, we don't have the money available. And what are we going to do? We're going to eventually have to raise taxes to accommodate that. In the bill that we passed, we put $700 million to do that. This gives us, if we don't expend it here, that much more that we're able to protect ourselves should we need to. It makes those negotiations, I think, more difficult. I would ask you, though, and I'll do this for all of you rhetorically, if you will, but if you had a business now that had its own property, that had its own equipment, that wasn't going to ask for any tax relief, was in a proven industry, has a record of sales and production that they can borrow money against that we just talked about, that could provide contracts in the same area that we're talking about, $1 billion of contracts for product, and they came to us for $100 million in a loan, not something that we're giving to them, not a gift, for startup costs. Would you vote for it? Would you vote for it? What if it's in an industry that's supplied this state with tax dollars for longer than, and y'all can look at me, I got gray hair, longer than I've been alive. An industry that has funded the state of West Virginia for years and years and years. An industry that the company we're talking about has vowed to destroy. They've vowed to destroy it. And they've vowed to destroy it using the $260 million gift that's our tax dollars. We're planning on funding that, as opposed to if someone had come to us, a company that brought us to this dance that we're in today. You all know, of course, what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the coal business. I'm talking about the coal industry. Would we do that? Would we just simply extend $100 million to one of our own that came to us with that venture? I wonder. Close, ladies and gentlemen. I really do think it is our job to do what we can to bring business here to the state of West Virginia. And I think it's our job to evaluate those kind of things. But I don't know that it is our job to supply risk capital to a startup company. I do think we want to help everybody that comes to this great state. And even with the corporate documents that want to defeat those things that we've done here, I welcome this company to West Virginia because everybody should be able to come and work and do business here, and we want to be friendly to. But I don't know that we want to open that cookie jar and empty it on a risky business. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 22nd, Douglas Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just yesterday, we passed a $75 million additional tax credit for our coal companies trying to improve their mines. Would we do this for those that brought us? That's an annual tax credit. We just passed it out of the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure. You'll hear it reported here, I'm sure, on Monday. I've already signed the report. But it's not just for building roads and those sorts of things. That's for their processing facilities. That's for their processing facilities. That's for new improvements at their mines so that they're able to produce more coal. But that's not a one-time expenditure. In 4 years, that's going to be more money than we'd ever consider for this appropriation. Now, I've heard a lot of discussion that this is somehow a startup. You got to decide here, folks. Is it a startup, or has it raised more than $500 million last year? Is it a fledgling company, or is it a company that has raised an incredible amount of money and has employees and actually has, according to their own documents and according to the memorandum of agreement that everyone has, that they already have a small manufacturing facility for this in Pennsylvania? So is it a startup or isn't it? I believe the answer to that's no. I think that any suggestion otherwise is just simply inaccurate. Now, I stood on this floor yesterday and I mentioned that I'm very, very upset about the length of time we've had to review this deal. I was even more dismayed this morning to find out that I think I'm the only member of this House who managed to ask for the memorandum of agreement. And I would caution folks who haven't read it not to argue against something or put things out in the media and try to say that we're harming coal or this, that, or the other, or that we're not protected if you haven't bothered reading it. I read that memorandum of agreement on Monday because I asked for it. That memorandum of agreement requires sales. Not just, and there's been statements that we're all of a sudden just going to be handing this company dollars. If you read the memorandum of agreement, it's a 3-phase construction project, and we're building the building. We're building the improvements to the property. We're not just handing them money. And if they don't perform, they don't get the money. They don't get the asset. We keep it. So what does that mean? That means on 55 acres of 900 developable acres on a 1,200-acre site, that we've improved roads, that we've improved water, that we've improved probably gas transmission, that we've improved internet transmission to them, and we have a site prepared. Now, on top of all that, we've got a lot of returning members here. I would ask you to go back and look at your votes at Nucor, at Berkshire Hathaway, at Green Power, at the Pontoon Boat Company. Start listing them off. Look at your votes. I'm just looking for a little consistency here. And when you look at those votes, Google those companies and Google the statements of those companies. And if you want to have a social argument related to this, I would encourage you to Google them with the following words: diversity, equity, and inclusion. It'll take you right to their HR sites. If you want to think about what these pre-existing companies are, do that with Clorox. Do that with Procter & Gamble. Do that with Nucor. Do that with Berkshire Hathaway. We didn't have this argument about giving money to Warren Buffett. Precision Cast Parts is a Berkshire Hathaway subsidiary. We didn't have this argument about that because it was jobs in Jackson County, building titanium for the aerospace industry. We didn't say, my gosh, Elon Musk might benefit from this, and Starship, which, by the way, had a successful test firing yesterday. I just can't believe that we're sitting here making these arguments and trying to claim that this company is the one that's going to try to harm West Virginia. That this company is. It's just unbelievable. Mr. Speaker, We need to end this debate, pass this bill, and get back to building West Virginia's economy. I support the bill.
The gentleman at 29th, Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Chair of Finance yield for a question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. The Memorandum of Agreement, let's talk about that for a second. I have a question. Are you familiar with the production capacity requirements on the contracts within those phases included in the Memorandum of Agreement, the megawatt requirements for each phase?
No, I'm not familiar, but the Vice Chairman may be. He may be more readily to be able to answer your questions.
Would the Vice Chair yield?
Yes, sir, my friend.
Okay, thank you. So in phase one, it refers to a minimum order total of 5 megawatts. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is in phase one.
Yes.
Part B, initiation.
Okay. So my first question is, what is a megawatt?
I do not know the technical term of that. I am more than glad to give you the information of this deal and in the MOU, but I cannot tell you exactly what a megawatt is or how much energy it takes to produce a megawatt.
Okay. I can help you a little bit with that. A megawatt is 1,000,000 watts, and that's a unit of production. It's a rate of production. It's not a storage capacity. Okay, so a megawatt hour would be a unit of storage capacity. So we'll just assume for a second that that is referring or is intending to refer to a megawatt hour. Are you familiar with the amount of megawatt hours that would be produced by a power plant such as John Amos in a typical day?
I'm sure it would be a great amount.
If I told you that John Amos produces something in the order of 70,000 megawatt hours per day, would that sound reasonable?
I would take the gentleman's word for that.
Okay. Has the Vice Chair done any math on this to figure out the percentage of the production of one plant, such as John Amos, that would be covered by the capacity during phase one?
Well, to my friend, I would explain to you that this business does not produce any energy. This company is to store energy.
Precisely.
These batteries are designed to store energy on the grid. And where does the energy on the grid come from? Our base load comes from coal power and gas-powered power plants. So this company will not produce any energy.
Understand.
These batteries are designed to store energy.
Exactly, and that's why I'm asking why these numbers are not expressed in storage capacity units, which would be megawatt hours, because you need to know that you're going to be able to produce a certain amount of electricity for a certain amount of time. We need to know. So, for example...
And to the gentleman's question, I would say that this 5 megawatts is that they would have storage for 5 megawatts of energy. That would be the very common explanation of what I think is in the MOA.
For how long? 5 megawatts for what length of time?
I don't believe that the MOA says the length of time. It just says the amount of storage. Yeah. So how long can a battery store energy for? I believe that that's a question that I can't answer right now, but this is what this is designed to store that amount of energy.
So a megawatt hour would be the appropriate rate to be using here because you could produce 5 megawatts for an hour. So as a percentage of the total amount of production that John Amos can produce in a day, this would work out to 0.007. Are you aware of that?
Phase one, yes, sir.
0.007% of their total production. Phase two, are you aware that that would work out to about 0.07% of their total production? That means that they would be able to take 0.0% of their daily production and store that amount and put that back into the grid.
I trust the gentleman's math, but I would tell you, I would also advise you that as only in phase two.
Mm-hmm. Phase three, it jumps all the way to 0.35%. 0.35%. That's 250 megawatt hours. according to my calculations. I just want to make sure that you were aware of those figures.
I'm very aware of those figures, but I would also caution the gentleman that we are not going to get to phase 3 and just quit. This is the bare minimum to get us to phase 3. Do you not think that this company, when they start to produce batteries, when they hit the thresholds for our phase 3, that they will stop making batteries? They will continue to grow their company and sell batteries all over the country, and that capacity will grow.
Perhaps. But under the terms of this deal, in order to reap the full benefits of this deal, all they have to hit as far as a threshold is 0.35% of the total production capacity of one coal plant. We're talking about this like it's going to revolutionize the grid, and all these coal plants are going to be feeding power into it all day long.
Is there a question in there?
Does that sound reasonable to you?
I would say that it sounds reasonable for the first phases of this for the company to get started. That the company starts somewheres.
Does it sound reasonable that we should be shelling out $290 million for a company which can only provide 0.35% of a plant's daily production capacity?
Well, to the gentleman, that's a policy question, and that's a question that every delegate on this House floor will have to ask themselves here in probably about 20 or 30 minutes.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Gentleman from the 52nd Nugget Row is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I gave comments yesterday, but it didn't have my economic impact statement from WVU, from the folks who know what they're talking about, or at least that's the way we've always treated Dr. Deskins. And there's another doctor with him, Dr. Cristiati, that prepared an economic impact statement for this factory. And so, you know, if you're thinking, well, gee, I think I'm going to vote against this, well, what you're voting against is a total output by this factory in 2029, which is about 6 years from now, when it's up and going and rolling, of $2.1 billion. And you say, well, how many jobs, Larry, are we going to get out of that? 750 jobs in the plant. Want to guess how many we get outside the plant? All those people live up and down the northern panhandle. 3,300 jobs for a total of 4,100 jobs that a yes vote will give you and a no vote will take away from you. How much is the employee compensation on that? $611 million a year go to the employees when this company gets up and running completely. How much do they pay in taxes? We're giving them $290 million of our hard-earned tax money. And I agree with that. We need to, I certainly agree with my friend from Mercer, we need to pay attention to the numbers and to what happens in this body and what we do to taxpayers. But let me point out that when they're up and going, want to guess how much the taxes are that they're going to generate? $57 million a year. Now, do a little math. In 1 year, they're at at 10 years, they're at $570 million in taxes, just the taxes that they're going to pay to the state and to the county and perhaps the town of, city of Weirton. Well, if you go times 20, they're paying over $1 billion in taxes, and this is one plant. One plant is going to have this kind of economic impact. And you say, well, yeah, but it's not in my district. Well, you know, it's not in Kanawha County, but Kanawha will get something somewhere along the line with the kind of thinking that this proposal that the Secretary of Economic Development has delivered to us. Others of us are going to be able to share in this. First of all, that $1 billion in taxes over 20 years, that'll come right back into all of us in state government for one factory. But what else does it do? It creates a critical mass on the Ohio River. We had an incredible industrial base on the Ohio River 50 years ago. And we can hear about, gee, why don't we have a plant that's proven technology, something that's a product that we all know? That was the Weirton Steel plant, ladies and gentlemen, and where is it? It's a flat lot. Nobody's offering to bring a steel plant back there. Oh, wait a minute, we got one down in Jackson County. We got Nucor coming in. That's true, and I think most of everybody in the building voted for that and should have. That's all right. But I think that we need to, a yes vote is also a compliment to our Secretary of Economic Development, because we're not giving $290 million to these folks to walk out the gate and start manufacturing operations. We're phasing it in very carefully. There are 3 phases to it, and those 3 phases have been looked at by the folks in Morgantown about what the economic impact is. This is our seed corn. This is the money in surplus that we're able to use to create more money in the future. And I cannot figure out how coal doesn't come out just fine on this. I don't understand. It will produce the energy, coal and natural gas will produce the energy needed for these batteries to store energy and be available to protect the grid. Now, the number of jobs at 750 comes in 5 or 6 years, but the impacts are phased in. You can probably guess that it's phase 1 is probably about 1/3 of what we're talking about, what I just gave you numbers on. Phase 2 gets you up to something like 350 employees, about half, and it starts to grow. But by the time this factory is up and going, you will not recognize the northern panhandle of West Virginia. This is a major manufacturing find. It's a prize. Now, maybe it won't turn out. Maybe the secretary will come to us and say, you know, we're not giving them any more money because they just haven't produced the product that we thought. That might happen to us, but he has structured the deal so that he can come back and say we're not going to give them the rest of the money. So I think we've got to look at this from the standpoint of who we are, what we're going to use some of this surplus for. It is seed corn. It is what we need to invest. It will make the Ohio River area of West Virginia a critical mass of industrialization. There's plenty of room on this very site. I think we're using 50 acres out of I don't know how many hundreds. There's plenty of room for more factories right next door. And that's what happens in industries that are successful when they have the transportation of the river, the railroads. They're close to Pittsburgh, but not in Pennsylvania. They're close to other cities in the East Coast. They can sell these batteries. And just think, you're going to vote against 4,100 jobs? You know, I think this is not a matter of rhetoric. It's a matter of just common sense. What do we spend our seed corn on? Well, this transaction is one of those. And it's delivered to us by the Secretary of Economic Development. And it's not an easy thing to do to compete nationwide for these kinds of factories. But he's brought it to us, and I think we need to vote yes and confirm that we do want this transaction to happen. We want to see the jobs in the northern panhandle. We want to create critical mass on the Ohio River for industrialization. And basically, we, yes, want to come back as an industrial state. Mr. Speaker, I urge the members to vote in favor of the bill.
Gentleman from the 27th, Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like for us to think for a moment about West Virginia's geography. We have 2 panhandles. We have most of the population of our state along borders. We can't do any development or welcome anyone that is not going to benefit a bordering state. It's impossible. The Kanawha Valley is one of the few exceptions. If we were Texas and this was coming to Austin, every dollar, every job would come into Texas, but we're not. And when you think about the narrowness of the northern panhandle, Pennsylvania to the right, Ohio to the left, you can't avoid it. So are we going to abandon the opportunity for development in Weirton and the people of Weirton who have suffered with the loss of Weirton Steel just because somebody on either side of them is going to get a job? They're also going to work in West Virginia. They're going to get gas in West Virginia. They're going to consider living in West Virginia. There will be advantages. But think about that you know, I love our state, and yet we have some built in with our geography, we have some built-in disadvantages. You can't build a road without putting a bridge every quarter of a mile. You can't have a water system without having a pump to get enough pressure up in the top of the hill. What we do is more difficult. And because our population areas, generally speaking, are along the borders, we can't welcome a company like this and not have some economic impact on the other side of the border. So are we going to say to people like Weirton and all those towns along the Ohio River and the Maryland border and everything in Morgantown, we're not going to do this because somebody in another state might get a job? Well, we've got to try to overcome these difficulties, and one of the ways to do so is to try to help the people of Weirton and the economy of West Virginia. So I do urge support for this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 44th, Doug Kirby, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Vice Chairman of Finance yield?
Shirley.
Thank you, sir. Are any severance taxes going to fund this project?
The funding that's coming, the funding for this for this project is coming from excess revenue.
And isn't it true that that excess revenue, commonly referred to as surplus, is coming from a large part from severance taxes?
It's coming from unfunded revenues and not necessarily.
But true to say, part of that is severance taxes that have gone into that fund.
It's fair to say that our general revenue budget definitely has severance tax in it.
Okay. So in addition to severance tax, it would also contain personal income taxes that were paid by teachers, nurses, and law enforcement?
It's fair to say that our general revenue budget has taxes from all sectors are deposited into our general revenue.
And is this agreement, as it's set up, is it a loan or is it a grant to this company?
It is an investment that the Economic Development Secretary and the Economic Development is making in this company to bring this company to West Virginia.
So is it true that the total investment as of right now between private and government investors is approximately $750 million?
I can talk to the investment that the state is proposed to make, and that total investment is $290 million.
But as we stand here today, you're not sure how much the company itself has raised?
I'm here to represent this piece of legislation that we have before us today, and that piece of legislation is for appropriation of $115 million, but I'm telling you that the full appropriation, if the project meets all the parameters, is $290 million.
Once we give them this money, does this legislative body or any apparatus of our government have any control over how they spend that money?
We are giving this money to the state's Economic Development Authority, who is a division under the executive branch. They will be the ones giving them their money. We are only appropriating these dollars to the state's economic development.
Thank you. Were you or any other members of House leadership or this legislative body involved in the negotiation of this agreement?
The Economic Development Department is the arm of the executive branch who goes out and tries to find opportunities for the states for economic development, so that is in their purview to do those negotiations.
When were you or the chairman first given a copy of the memorandum of agreement?
I was emailed a copy of the memorandum of agreement 2 days ago or 3 days ago. I have to check my email. It was sent to me by counsel for it was sent to me by counsel for economic development.
So that would have been Wednesday or Tuesday?
Tuesday, I believe. It was emailed to me.
And didn't this bill come through finance on Monday?
Yes, I had a general understanding of it, but I did not have a hard copy of it for me to prepare myself for today.
So before this bill was moved through Finance Committee, you nor any of the members of the Finance Committee had a copy of the memorandum of agreement?
We had been generally speaking of all of the conditions of this MOA and this deal for the past weeks. I believe you've been involved in a lot of this discussion that we've had in our caucus every morning. I believe this piece of legislation was brought up in caucus at least 3 mornings while I was there, that there were discussions, and any question could have been asked by any Republican member of the legislature.
Well, here's a question. Can you give this body just a brief explanation of the technology we're about to put $300 million on?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Can you give this body and the people that are watching, the people whose tax dollars are about to go to this, can you just give us a brief explanation of the technology that we're betting on?
Sir, it's not my job to sit here and explain the technology to you. My job, what I'm doing here today, is to talk about the supplemental appropriation that we're making to the economic development for this project. Now, if you think me as a part-time legislator who is a contractor in my full-time life can explain to you every detail in an iron rust battery process, I can't do that. There may be someone in this house that can do that, but it's not me.
Don't you think, though, that it's important that we as a body understand the investment we're making that's been touted as groundbreaking, earth-shattering, revolutionizing? How is it that those things can be said on this floor and the Vice Chair of Finance can't even explain? I'm not asking for details. Just give us a brief summary of the technology that we're about to vote on.
Well, sir, that once again, that's a policy question, and that's a question that every member of this House will have to ask themselves. When we did, when I'm sure you weren't here, when we did the Nucor deal, did we know every nuance of how Nucor takes their steel and they use the process that they use for old steel to make new steel? Did we know every absolute process of what Toyota did when they came to the state and how they were going to build their cars? You can't ask someone in a body of this that's sitting on this floor to design or to tell you the nuances of how a company is going to do their process.
But isn't it
and
true
I'm sure some of that is proprietary.
But when we gave money to Toyota, we knew they were making cars.
Sure.
Correct? And we had seen a car. We'd ridden in a car. We could go and look at cars on the internet, correct?
Correct.
Have you seen a battery? One of these batteries?
I have not.
Have you even seen an illustration of one of these batteries?
Once again, sir, I'm here to give you the information on the MOA, and I'm here to give you the information for the supplemental that we are talking about here today, a supplemental appropriation for $115 million that's going to the West Virginia Economic Development.
Is there any hypothetical in which we could lose all the money that we've invested already?
Hypothetically, we could, anything could happen hypothetically.
Are there any circumstances in which once we give them this additional $110 million that we could lose all of that money?
No, because there's parameters. Before we're going to give them any more money, they certainly have parameters that they have to meet. But hypothetically, as I said before, anything could happen hypothetically.
As you pointed out earlier, I'm new to this body. So this is a legitimate question here. Has West Virginia ever directly funded a startup or venture company?
Yes.
When did that occur?
I don't have that information, I'm sorry. But I'm sure along the way, somewheres in the state through economic development, small business development, EDA, we've probably worked with some new startup business.
As Vice Chairman of Finance and a member of this body, do you believe that that's a good role of government, is to be in the venture capitalist business?
Sir, that's a policy question, and once again, that's a decision that every person on this floor will have to make that decision here in about a half hour, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Speaker, may I speak to the bill?
Yes, Jim was recognized.
Thank you. Democrats, what happened to you guys? While I disagree with a lot of the proposals you have on social issues and a lot of the positions you take, one of the things I actually respected about each and every one of you and your party at large is the stance you took towards billionaires. You said tax the rich, tax the billionaires, simplify the code, make everybody pay their fair share. And you went from that just a couple days ago to now you want to give billionaires our tax dollars. I mean, it amazes me that you can get behind a bill that would take nurses.
Jim has raised a point of order.
The gentleman's supposed to be addressing Speaker, not the Democrats.
While that is true, the rules do provide that all comments are to be addressed through the chair. The gentleman's point will be well taken, but the gentleman nevertheless still has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Democrats have repeatedly talked about the fact that they want to tax billionaires. Then they come in here today and they want to give billionaires tax money. But I'm not just picking on the Democrats, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Republicans, almost every one of you ran in here on being good stewards of your taxpayers' money and against crony capitalism. Yet here we sit in just 30 minutes or maybe a couple hours, we're going to pass the mother of all crony capitalist projects. And not only that, you guys are going to go back, Mr. Speaker, and tell your constituents that you took money from coal severance taxes, you took money from natural gas severance taxes, you took money from nurses, teachers, single mothers who are waiting tables. You did that so you could give that money to Bill Gates and Chinese investors so they could build some type of plant to make something with the aim and the goal of destroying coal and natural gas, which has funded and kept this state alive and led to the creation of this state. So to say I'm disappointed would be an understatement. We all know this bill is going to pass. We all know that there's enough people that are willing to take this bet, regardless of the fact that we just found out about the details of this about an hour ago, despite the fact that the memorandum of agreement had not been circulated until a little over an hour ago. We're going to sit here and place such a large bet on a company that hasn't even built the first building yet, hasn't made the first battery yet. Vice Chairman can't even explain to us what a battery would do, hasn't seen a picture of it, hasn't even seen an illustration. So everybody knows how I feel, and if you're not sure of all the reasons, yesterday I think I made them pretty clear as to why I think this is a bad deal. But I believe his name's pronounced Jaramillo. That's the CEO of this company. So I'm going to, in his words, tell you some of the reasons as to why this may in fact fail. And this is directly quoting him from an article. He acknowledges that the project could fail for a multitude of reasons. Here are just a few. The technologies don't achieve radically lower costs. They can't last for the 20 to 25-year lifetime expected. Power markets don't allow for this type of asset to be compensated. Financiers don't consider the product bankable. Societies build a lot more transmission lines. Carbon capture technology removes the greenhouse gases from conventional generation, and small modular nuclear plants may get permitting, providing zero carbon energy on demand. They're also listing hydrogen and its expansion as a reason as to why this market may fail. So don't just take my word for it and my criticism and my skepticism on this bill. Listen to the CEO. And the reason he's not that concerned about it is because he's playing poker with our taxpayers' dollars. I won't belabor the point. I just ask each and every one of you guys to just think about this. Would you do this with your family's budget? Would you go to your local city's meeting and suggest that they take this percentage of their surplus or this percentage of their budget and put it on a venture capitalist business that's coming in with unproven technology that you can't even produce a picture of? And if the answer to either one of those questions is no, then you have to vote against this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 79th District, Hanson's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've been here a long time. I didn't realize we were going to have to re-debate this bill today after spending so much time yesterday. And I certainly didn't think that on a Friday when everybody wants to get home, we were going to be talking about the difference between a megawatt and a megawatt hour and doing math on the House floor. But that did happen a little while ago. And I wanted to speak specifically to that issue. I support this bill. I appreciate the Department of Economic Development negotiating a deal that's going to bring more manufacturing jobs to the state of West Virginia. I wish it was in my district, but I'm happy for the Northern Panhandle to capture these jobs. It's important for the entire state. Now, to that issue of megawatts and megawatt hours, it may seem like a detail, but I think it was presented as a way to undermine the deal that was negotiated and to demonstrate that the amount of panels that, or the amount of batteries that are being produced by this facility are tiny. So let me assure you that it is correct to use megawatts when judging or when measuring the size of batteries. If you don't believe me, look it up. Look at the U.S. Energy Information Administration, which is the part of the government that tracks energy supply and demand and looks at trends and makes projections. And if you look at their projection for large-scale battery storage, for this grid-scale battery storage that's going to be produced by Form Energy, it's in megawatts, as it should be, because megawatts is a measure of capacity. And the good news is it's projecting that these grid-scale battery projects are going to increase hugely over the coming years, on the order of thousands of megawatts per year, demonstrating that there's a very large market for the exact type of products that will be produced at this new facility. And in fact, at full capacity, this new facility will build 500 megawatts of battery storage per year, selling into a market of thousands and thousands of megawatts of battery storage that's projected over the next few years. So there is a market for this. These are good manufacturing jobs coming to the state of West Virginia, and I urge support for the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 47th, Longenacre, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents hired me to come down here and be their voice and hold the line on fiscal conservatism. I was never asked to come down to this body and be a bank loan officer, especially with public money. I want to point out something for some folks who have a very short memory. There was a time not too long ago during a presidential administration. I won't name that president by name. I'll just say that the Obama terrace down the hallway is named after this president. This president promised, and you will remember, it's not too long ago, promised green energy jobs, shovel-ready stuff, cutting-edge technology, earth-shattering technologies that's going to create millions of jobs. And so a bunch of Republicans in that National Congress at the time joined with a bunch of Democrats, and they set forth to give out hundreds of millions of tax dollars that could have went to a plethora of other endeavors, but to the tune, cumulatively, billions of dollars went to numerous green technology companies. The term wokeness hadn't even hit the scene yet back then. Some of these companies you might remember: A123, Abound Solar, Beacon Power, Inter1, Solyndra, Fisker Automotive, Nevada Geothermal Power. The list goes on and on and on. Politicians from both sides of the aisles tripped over themselves to get in line like a bunch of lemmings headed toward the cliff, enthusiastic about all the wonderful jobs they're going to create. You'll be hard-pressed to find any of those companies still in business today, and that money was never recovered. These are just the facts. Memories are short in the political landscape. Folks, My good friend over here from the 44th yesterday spoke on a plethora of projects and needs that the people of West Virginia have right now. He spoke on that yesterday, so I won't belabor that. And I was thinking to myself, my goodness, what if we actually came down here not with the mindset of being a banker, a loan officer, but with the mindset of maintaining a balanced budget, a flat budget, and if we do produce an excess called a surplus, which simply, and you guys heard me say this before, a surplus is when we take more from the taxpayers than what was needed to fund the basic essentials of government. Imagine if we took that surplus. Let's take a fraction of that, $290 million. What if we were to divide that by 55 counties? What could your county, think about what your county could do with $5.3 million right now. What projects? Maybe there's a wastewater treatment plant they need to upgrade, a water treatment plant they need to upgrade, bad water lines, potholes, the list goes on and on. That's this $290 million that this will amount to, folks, could be for one area of the state, which will produce 750 jobs, maybe, could equate to $5.3 million per county right now. And let's say that money goes into the economic development. We earmarked that $5.3 million specifically for economic development in your county to help small businesses. Because, folks, small businesses hire people in West Virginia. They truly do. If your county, if 55 counties receive $5.3 million each, I want you to think about something. Let's say they take that $5.3 million and they work up $100,000 small business loans for local businesses in your district. Just $100,000, a small business loan that they have to pay back, not a free grant giveaway of the tax people's money, but a small business loan to help these people expand, help current West Virginians expand their businesses and hire new employees. $100,000 business loans, folks, that equates to 53 small businesses standing up in your county. 53 small businesses in every county in this state. Let's say they hire an average of 5 people. Do the math. Now, we know that all small businesses are not successful. So let's use a worst case scenario, and let's say half of these 53 businesses that you helped start up because you didn't waste this money on some unknown technology, but rather you let your economic development folks invest it in the businesses, proven businesses back home. Let's say half of them fail. Half of them fail. That leaves 26 businesses per county, but they still have an average of 5 employees. That's 132 jobs per county. We're fighting over 750 jobs. 132 jobs per county, that equates to 7,287 jobs per county across the entirety of West Virginia. That's nearly 10 times more jobs than this deal purports to create. So if we were a bank loan officer, which I'm not, I would think about asking this company, let me see your industry trends. Let me see the character of your country, your credit history of your company. Let me see some things. I would ask specific questions like, let me see your year-to-date profit and loss balance sheet statements. I'm not sure this body has ever got the opportunity to see any of this that a normal banking loan officer would be asking before throwing this money at these people. information about the business, the date it was established, annual net profit, annual gross sales, a list of outstanding debts or obligations. I'm not sure, I know I haven't heard about any of this, but you're asking me to be a loan officer. I just gave you an example of what we could do for the people of West Virginia if we found a way to redistribute this money in a different way. But some of you, like lemmings, are going to trip over yourself. To redistribute wealth, you're going to take wealth from oil, gas, and coal, and you're going to redistribute that wealth to an out-of-state company who will not pay taxes in the state of West Virginia, business taxes, and you're enthusiastic to do so. The governor has done a lot of great for this state. He really has. But just like my friend from Mercer County, sometimes we're wrong. And folks, I think the governor is wrong on this one. This is a bad, risky deal. Think of the things that we could fund or the businesses we could prop up in your district if we could redistribute this in a better way. I'm a no vote on this. Thank you very much, Speaker.
The gentleman from the 87th, Doug Howell, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The great divide, or one of the great divides in this House on bills like this, seems to be less Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, but border versus center of the state. If you live on the border, a lot of times we look at things differently. I've heard a lot of people in the discussion today talk about these jobs might go into another state. Well, I'll give you an interesting statistic. Between Maryland and West Virginia, across the Potomac River, there are a total of 36 bridges. 22 of them, and that's rail, vehicle, and walking. 22 of those bridges are in my county. Only 14 are outside of my county. So when we talk about an economy, we don't talk about the economy of Mineral County, West Virginia. It's actually the economy of Mineral County, West Virginia, and Allegheny County, Maryland. We are so heavily connected. Like I said, about 75% of the bridges that connect our two states are all in my county. On a regular basis, I talk with State Senator Mike McKay, who has been in this chamber before. He's my counterpart on the other side of the river. Mike routinely calls me and says, hey, we're working on an economic development project that will help our area. He doesn't say it'll help his county or his state. He says it'll help our area. And I talked to him about projects that we're working on because we know our constituents in both states are going to benefit. He knows that when he creates jobs in Maryland, or they create jobs in Maryland, some of those people will live in West Virginia. Maryland will benefit, and West Virginia will benefit because it's a high-paying job. It's a low-paying job for the guy that has to be hired on at 7-Eleven for the shift change. And when we create jobs on our side of the border, some of his people benefit. This is not something that we should look at and say, we're worried about the jobs being created in the neighboring state or the employees being in the neighboring state because they come to our state. They purchase things here. Some of them will move here. As an employer, I've had employees that live in Maryland. And before I opened my business, I worked in Maryland. So when we create a job on the border, it helps our state and our region, and everybody benefits. Please support this legislation.
The gentleman from the 78th, Doug Shirelli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this issue I've been majorly torn on. I've gone back and forth a lot of the time. My colleagues around me know that I've gone back and forth a lot of times. My best friend from Preston County has heard more of it than anybody else. But as we've waded into this and the more that I've learned, I think that my least favorite part of this is how little that I feel like we were included in the deal-making process. I came in about a month ago. $75 million was already allotted, and now here we are, cart before the horse. I'm supposed to just follow suit because the deal is already done. I don't work for Mitch Carmichael. I don't work for the governor. I represent the people of my district. And I cannot go back to them and tell them that I helped write a check for $105 million to a company that said they want to put coal and natural gas out of business. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 54th, Doug Pushkin's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Vice Chair of Finance yield?
Shirley, my friend.
Thank you very much. I do not have the distinct honor of serving on the Committee on Finance, and I'm a bit confused by some of the debate, some of the questions, some of the comments that have been mentioned here today on the floor. So I just wanted to try to clear some things up, so I know how to vote. Okay, this is the question here is putting money into the Economic Development Office to improve property that the state owns, correct?
This is a supplemental appropriation of $115 million that we're giving to the Economic Development Agency to put towards the Form Energy project, yes.
And how it would be spent mainly is on the site development, correct?
So there was $75 million that was given from the state Economic Development Authority that was given to purchase the property and to start the infrastructure for the property. And some of this money is tied towards moving further towards more infrastructure and the phase 1 of the project. Or phase 2, I'm sorry, phase 2.
So the answer, yes, mainly site development, correct? However, the state still owns
we still
the property.
continue to own the property and will own the property until all 3 phases are met.
So basically, in layman's terms, we're helping to fix up the property to attract this tenant that's going to provide jobs. If they don't, we still maintain the property and somebody else could move in, correct?
Yes, so we are working, this is an old brownfield site that has been vacant for some time. There's a large piece of property there. This project takes a small piece of that project. I believe it's 55 acres. There's a total of around 1,200 acres that will be developable, that we are, maybe, ancillary businesses will come in, but there is more acreage that is available.
And the state owns it?
The state owns the 55 acres that this project will be on, yes.
Okay, and I was saying if certain metrics aren't met, the state still maintains the property and the company would
There
be
is
out.
certain criteria that must be met before the property will be turned over to the owners from the state.
Okay, so this is not a tax cut to billionaires, has nothing to do with with ideology. It's simply we're fixing up the property to attract a tenant that's going to provide a certain amount of jobs. If they don't, then the deal's off, correct?
Yeah, this is one of the rare deals that we've had that we have collateralization on the deal. When we did a deal with New Car, there was no collateralization. Yeah. So we do have the collateralization of the property.
Okay. Thank you for yielding.
Thank you.
Address the bill.
Gentleman is recognized.
I mean, to me, that's the question here. We're putting this money into site development to attract a tenant where there is no tenant right now in the Weirton Steel facility, to attract, how I see it, is tenant that will provide jobs and help economic growth in that part of the state. That's what the question is. And while I definitely agree with a lot of the arguments on both sides of this, especially over the amendment yesterday, over how we need to prioritize helping those who have in communities that have been impacted by the coal industry, I don't think that this bill has anything to do with that. So I would love to debate that. We have bills that are coming out. There's a bill coming out next week that would take American Rescue Plan dollars and invest it in the poorest parts of the state. I would hope that many members of this body would sign on to that bill, help us get it through, but I'm not going to debate that now because it's really not germane to this bill. It's not what we're talking about. This bill would have absolutely no impact on that. It's simply about how we want to invest this money. Do we want to improve this property and attract this company that we're holding them with, where we have a memorandum that holds their feet to the fire, unlike we did in other deals before. So, and while I am, amused that some of the opponents of this would like to, blame this on the, I'll put it this way. Yesterday, I think some of my friends over here were quoting songs from the 90s. I'll bring up another quote I remember from the 90s, and it's when I used to sometimes come here and observe, and I would be sitting up here, and the folks that were sitting over here, who were Republicans at the time, used to get up and ask a chairman to yield and say, does this bill create jobs? It was like a mantra over here. Does this bill create jobs? And they were right. And this bill will help incentivize the creation of jobs, so I'm going to support it. And if anyone would like to blame the Democrats on job growth, please do. We'll be voting yes.
Gentleman from the 28th, Ross is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to speak to the bill.
Yes, gentleman's recognized.
Came in here this morning with no intentions of speaking about this bill or anything else. We were all elected on November the 9th. I received this information on the contract with Form Energy right as we came into the chamber. I've never bought a house that I didn't have a termite inspection done on. Never bought a car that I didn't drive. I am concerned about putting this much money, West Virginia taxpayer monies, into a project that does not have a history. We do not know if this company is going to be successful. There's no record. All I know is that there's a bunch of New York investors and Bill Gates that's behind this operation. And the citizens that I'm here to represent that put me in my seat, just like each and every one of you all in here, you have to answer to them. I'm 100% for jobs. I hope that Form Energy decides to come to this location. I hope that they bring all those jobs. But I think that they need to put their money where their mouth is. I encourage you to consider the people that you're here representing, the hardworking people of this state that have paid these tax dollars into our state to create the money that we're talking about. I know it's Friday, and I know people are tired, and I've heard some people say, we like to go home on Friday. But I'm going to tell you, I'm here to represent the people of District 28, and if I'm here on Saturday night, from right here all the way through, I'm willing to stay. I hope you join me in voting no on this.
Gentleman from the 11th, Douglas Fehrenbacher is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to speak to the bill. I have to say that I appreciate the passion that I hear from the various speakers on the floor and in our caucus meetings. I realize that that passion comes from our belief in the financial stewardship and fiduciary responsibilities that we feel to West Virginians. It's obvious, however, that we have a different opinion on this bill and the role of the state in supporting Form Energy. I did a little research, and some of you have already heard this, so bear with me. 30 years ago, the legislature in South Carolina was contemplating whether or not that state was going to make a $600 million investment to create 2,000 jobs. They went ahead and did it. Now, the investment wasn't for new technology, it was for automobiles. However, that $600 million investment, which today would be worth $1.2 billion, the state of South Carolina now feels that there are over 30,000 jobs that were created and spun off from that initial investment. I'm sure there was lots of thoughts and second giving by those legislators back 30 years ago. Another question that I heard today was about this technology. I similarly was curious about it. You can all go look, you can Google iron air batteries, and there was an article published by Popular Mechanics earlier this year that discusses this, and it references an analysis done by NASA in 1968, and I will quote
very briefly a couple of sentences. And this is talking about iron air batteries. Another major advantage of the alkaline iron system is that iron is cheap and very abundant as a raw material. This factor is of greatest importance in addition to its high theoretical energy density. The long life cycle of the alkaline iron anode provides another attractive feature for this system. The last phrase in this article, and this is quote, "This system should become very attractive as a low-cost, high-energy density power source for communication and transportation applications." One other topic I'd like us all to understand and appreciate is that this is not a passing fad. The International Energy Association estimates that the world needs 266 gigawatts of storage by 2030. Under current trends, the global energy storage market will hit that target and grow quickly to a cumulative 942 gigawatts by 2040, representing $620 billion in investment over the next decades. What we're talking about is an investment of $290 million, which is a small percentage of that billions of dollars in investment. It's creating jobs. They've been referenced. None of us can guarantee that we'll have the success of a South Carolina, but I frankly believe that this is a prudent investment for West Virginia, and I support it. I would love for this facility, frankly, to be built in Wood County, my home district. But since we've signed this deal, I think it is our duty, our obligation to support this investment, and hopefully that will create those jobs, and even more so in this state. I urge support of this bill. Thank you.
Gentlelady from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I chose to be on the Finance Committee. I'm all excited because I want to know the numbers. I want to see where the money goes, where does it come from, how does this all work. And my very first bill was this bill in finance. Wow. So I didn't really know anything, but I have to sort of trust what the others are saying, that this is a good thing. So I am on board, okay? And then, so this is called an appropriation bill. But let me tell you what it is not. We are not voting on the company. The company itself was chosen by the executive branch. So all these discussions that we are having here and all the concerned emails and comments from our constituents should be directly directed to the executive branch. They need to know what the people want. So I hope that they are listening in to all the concerns. But here we are. The executive branch are working to find companies and make all the agreements. And then they do what I wish they would not do, is they go to the news and they share all their ideas and their goals and whatever, and then they send us the bill. And you can say, oh yeah, that's transparency, but I say, they give the people hope, and then they make a long nose, they dangle the carrot, and then when it doesn't come through, it's the legislator's fault. I came here to bring the people jobs, working on bringing them home, especially to my southern districts. Do I like the kind of business that was chosen by the executive branch? Not really. But what do the people say? They say jobs. It's a job. It's a job to feed the families. It's to grow the community. Do I like the values that that firm, or any other for that matter, that will come? Do I like them? No. Green Deal, Vogue, you call whatever it's called. It's all around us. It's in West Virginia, it's in the United States, it's in Europe, it's everywhere. There is no escape. But ultimately, it's the people's choice. Will the people in Weirton take on the negative values that are associated with that company? It's up to the people. What I know that they want is the opportunity to work. But I will tell them, be aware, be vigilant. The new people that will move in, they will bring their ideas. They will run for the Board of Education. They run for the City Council. And that is when our communities will be changed from within. We all have to be careful, and we have to watch where we are going with this. And while I love listening to all these passionate discussions here, and I will stay as long as it takes, but maybe some of our brightest that are sitting in here should be sitting at the tables at the executive branch, because maybe then we would not have to deal with this problem here right now. But all I'm saying is that the workflow between the branches has huge flaws. And for the future, do we give the other branch guidelines to tell them how much money they can spend? I will vote for the community, but but they will have to take on the responsibilities to take care for themselves. And I hope that the other branch got the memo for future projects. Thank you.
Gentleman in the 42nd, Doug Steele.
Woo! We got a lot of philosophy in here over the last 2 days. I mean, man, I have heard the panoply, of how in the world does a budget appropriation draw out this much philosophy? I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. I want to quote a few philosophers this morning. First great American philosopher I would quote would be Yogi Berra. It's deja vu all over again. I've been having this talk for 3 years. 3 years ago, you might remember me standing in here talking about Secretary Carmichael when we made him a cabinet secretary. And I said, not only would I buy his business cards, I'd pack his lunch if that's what we had to do. And I'll tell you why. It's because when I campaigned, when we're talking about what we campaign about, when I campaigned and I went out and talked to people, you know what they said? My dad being one of them, I even said this on the floor 3 years ago, is, you know what? Why don't we have somebody that's going out there and talking to these companies and trying to get them to come in and make a new investment in West Virginia and diversify our economy? So guess what? We followed through on a campaign promise. That's exactly what we did. And I think a lot of us in here thought that was a pretty good idea. A lot of us in here didn't like the personality of who was getting chosen for it, but at the same time, we agreed with the idea. There should be somebody out there that's a front man that we can all trust to try and do the right thing, to try to draw in businesses. And you know what? Over the last 3 years, it's worked. It has worked. We're seeing companies in Kanawha County. We're seeing stuff come down south. We're seeing stuff going into Weirton. We're seeing stuff going into Mason County right now. And you know what? When we're starting to talk about our political philosophy of what we're going to spend money on, I'm just okay with investing in the future growth of this state that's going to support my kids, my grandkids, and my great-grandkids. Because I'm going to tell you something right now. If we don't start diversifying this economy, West Virginia is not changing the rest of the world. We're sitting down at their chess table playing tic-tac-toe right now if we think we're going to change the way they're going. We have got to start playing the game. And that's exactly what the administration is doing right now. But who are we doing it for? Let me quote another great American philosopher, Dusty Rhodes. I've wined and dined with kings and queens, and I've slept in the alley eating pork and beans. Hard times. Hard times. We've talked about hard times before. You know who's got hard times? It ain't the people in here. People in here got our high-minded philosophy. It's the people out there. They're not paying attention to this philosophical debate. You know what they're paying attention to? It's how they're going to make the rent payment next month, how they're going to pay the electric bill, how they're going to get a better job and they can get out of working at the gas station and get back in and start working in a factory somewhere. That's who I campaign for. That's who I come in here and work for. Because let me tell you something. All this high-minded philosophy, I hope it shows up in 3 weeks when you vote to fund Section 8 housing and you vote to fund Medicaid and you vote to fund SNAP and you vote to fund the electric payment program for low-income folks. Man, we don't bat an eye then. Our high-minded philosophy's out the window. We just start hitting the green button. Don't even think about it. We're talking about taking less than 2% of this budget. All surplus, by the way. I don't think I need to ask anybody to yield. I can read. It says surplus. It says surplus. But no, we will take and fund billions of dollars of just outright handouts. Don't even think about it. In the name of getting federal money, we get those matching dollars, man. We'll do it all day long, won't we? Been doing it for 5 years together, haven't we? Yeah, we have. Hit that button every time. But all because of somebody's politics and some comment they made in a 15-second YouTube video. We don't want to get behind it. Let me tell you something about that. I don't give a technicolor damn what that man's politics are. If he is putting a paycheck in the pocket of West Virginians, and he is putting food on the table, and that West Virginian can have a Silverado in the driveway, and he's got a pot roast on the table, and he's got a roof over his kids' heads, you know what that does? It puts pride in his heart. Puts pride in his heart. Makes his back straight. He can hold his chin up when he goes to church on Sunday and put some offering in the plate rather than standing up asking a prayer request for help finding a job. This is the prayer request. Get in here and do something to bring jobs into this state. And by gum, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something else. Another great American philosopher, Master P, said, real hustlers lose it and get it back easy. And that's West Virginia. That is our mentality. And let me tell you something. That man downstairs, the big man, I've been playing ball for him for 35 years. 35 years I've been playing ball for Coach. And let me tell you something about him. He don't lose. Y'all can say what you want to about him. I've never watched him play a game he lost. He's one of the biggest coal producers the state's ever seen. As a matter of fact, his companies are still running active mines in my district. We talk about coal mining. I'm all about coal mining. I voted for 5 years in here to do the same type of programs we're talking about for coal. So let's not act like we're not doing that. One of the very first things I voted on was a $300 million tax cut on severance for the coal companies, for steam coal production. I came in on the very first special session I ever came in on was to give $15 million for a coal-fired power plant just to keep it open, and they turned around and shut it down 2 years later. We talk about making an investment in something and then it's not working. We do that all the time. We do that all the time. Another great American philosopher, Wayne Gretzky, said, you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Are you going to miss some of the shots you take? Absolutely. But you're going to miss 100% of the ones you don't take. You're going to miss 100% of the ones you don't take. And I'll tell you something. The man downstairs has a plan, and we have to trust him with it. We talk about separation of powers in here. We talk about wanting to have a seat at the table in these negotiations and everything else. What we're called to do is legislate. What they're called to do is execute. They are executing. They're coming back to you and saying, in our execution, this is what we need. And you're going to have to make a decision on that. My decision, 100% of the time, is going to be to take a swing at it. I think we all in here know that I'm willing to risk it all. Are you? Are you willing to risk it all so that somebody in your district can have pride in their heart and have that job and have that paycheck? I'll tell you something else another great American philosopher, Zig Ziglar, said. You get everything out of life you want by helping enough other people get what they want. What we're helping people do right now is be self-sufficient. Is we're fostering that growth. We're giving them an opportunity. We're creating a bridge to where they can come in. Because right now, all around us, there's a story out there yesterday that Honda's doing the same thing with EV batteries just across the river in Ohio, investing close to $1 billion over the next few years. Building batteries. Building batteries. And we're letting the politics of this get in the way right now of having more of that growth coming right into here. And right now, because of the work we're doing in this field, being all the above, trying to attract, trying to grow, we're seeing that growth swell up in this state right now with these great projects that are coming about. Economic development is the name of the game from here on out. Ain't nobody taking your gun, ain't nobody aborting your baby. It's time for economic development. It's time to get down to brass tacks and do what the people sent us here to do, and that's to create jobs. Now, does that mean growing government? Absolutely not. But I'll tell you what, if government can foster an environment where new technology can grow, I think that's good for everybody. It's going to be good for my district. The Winding Gulf is the greatest smokeless coal seam the world has ever seen. You want to know what that's used for? Steel. Making steel. What are we doing here? We're investing in a place that's going to need metal like you wouldn't believe. It's going to help. Rising tides lift all ships. We don't need a scarcity mentality of we don't have enough resources, so we got to protect what we have and be jealous of what other people have. We need to have an abundance mentality, that there's enough opportunity here for all of us to grow, for all of us to be successful. And if I help you out and we help him out, then it's going to rise all of us and not take away from anybody. Economic development is the name of the game. And the last great American philosopher I'd quote today is Ric Flair. Like it or not, you better learn to love it, because it's the best thing going today. Vote green.
Gentleman from the 100th, Rednauer.
My eyesight isn't that great, so I can't see the numbers over there. I lost my eyesight to some degree in the Marine Corps and Defense Intelligence. So would Delegate Steele yield for a question, please? Are you familiar with the quote by another philosopher, Vladimir Lenin? The capitalists will sell us the rope with which we hang them. Thank you. Would the chairman of Technology and Infrastructure yield for a question?
Certainly.
I apologize for not asking for the MOA earlier. I was working on Veterans Affairs issues. Specifically, we have a Veterans Preference Code from 1979 that essentially wouldn't allow us to give any points to anybody who'd fought Afghanistan, Iraq, Gulf War, Grenada, Panama, etc. So that was my focus for a little while. So I didn't request it, I should have. I was in the committee meeting yesterday, and if you'll remember, I was against the credits for the coal until I asked a series of questions. Okay, so, and was very much against those because it looked to me like we were doing a giveaway. But can you tell me what the coal industry is going to do for the state of West Virginia for those credits?
Sure. So in one instance, they're helping to build roads that would allow them to have better access to their mines. Generally, that's about $100,000 a year per company maximum on that. The secondary portion of that bill is that they're able to create prep plants and things of that nature that allow them to better utilize their mines. And those are all private infrastructure and really just equipment at their mines.
But we're going to be getting direct value back from those tax credits.
Yep. Gentleman will state the point.
Mr. Speaker, are we talking about the supplemental appropriation, or are we talking about the bill that the gentleman from 22nd I'm sorry. Are we talking about the supplemental appropriation for economic development, or are we talking about the bill that the gentleman from the 22nd passed in his committee yesterday?
That point's well taken. The gentleman is recognized to ask questions about this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
With that in mind, the gentleman may continue.
I understand, Mr. Speaker. I was speaking to the fact that we've heard some discussion about how we are already providing credits to the coal industry, and that is some justification for us providing a $290 million de facto grant to a company. These are related issues, I believe. So I would.
Well, the gentleman is recognized.
Very good. So, Mr. Chairman, let me get back to where we were at. My discussion with the coal industry at one point during the testimony was that they actually believed that this was an overestimate of the amount of credits that they would be receiving, that this was actually a substantial. Would you agree with that, or do you think that that's a valid point?
I think that they testified to some degree about that. They thought that the fiscal note was a little high. That said, this is one of many credits that we have, some of which pre-exist. So would I necessarily agree? I think on this one I would agree with the tax department.
Okay. And I'm not sure why this bill didn't actually come at some point for at least a review at the Technology and Infrastructure Committee, but has there been any demonstration of this technology in a commercially viable battery?
Yes.
Yes, you want to state the question or state the point?
Again, Mr. Speaker, we're talking about supplemental appropriations dealing with moving money to the economic development. The gentleman's questions to the chairman of technology has nothing to do with the supplemental.
Well, this last question was about the technology to be funded by the supplemental, so the chair will permit that question. So the gentleman may continue with that question.
Have you seen that type of technology demonstrated?
Yes, there's actually under construction right now a battery project in Minnesota. It's called the Cambridge Energy Storage Project with Form Energy using their batteries.
And is that an iron air battery?
My understanding is that yes, it is.
And it has been commercially.
It's under construction right now. I have an article up from September 15th, 2021. Great River Energy's partner on its incoming Cambridge Energy Storage Project, Form Energy, recently revealed long-awaited details about its technology. The primary component of Form Energy's first of its kind multi-day battery is also a cornerstone of Minnesota's economy, iron.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. That's something I was not aware of, and I had not seen anything that had indicated that it was, in fact, commercially viable and had been produced and demonstrated.
I used the Google machine just literally from my desk here this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the Vice Chairman of Finance yield? Sorry.
Gladly.
Okay. Is there any requirement that these jobs will, in fact, be in the state of West Virginia?
If you look at the MOA, have you done
I've been
research?
reviewing it. Yes, I've been reviewing it while we've been sitting here.
Okay. Total project completion, page 8 and 9. If you see there, section 4. Notwithstanding and foregoing unless waived by the West Virginia Economic Development, the completion date has failed to employ, it says that they must employ 750 full-time equivalent employees in the state of West Virginia. Now, it does not say that they must be from the state of West Virginia, but the jobs must be in the state. for the proposed project. If they do not meet that criteria, then they will not have the completed phases of the project, and the property would not be turned over to them, and they most likely would not get the last of the money.
Okay, so the jobs would have to be in the state of West Virginia. They could live outside the state, obviously. Okay.
I'm sure, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that answers another question I had. And then, does the state of West Virginia own the property at this point?
They do.
Okay. And what would the valuation of the property be at the time that we anticipate that it would be turned over, 2029 timeframe?
I can't answer that question. I don't know what the property values would raise from the improvements. I would say they would be substantial.
What would the approximate value of the property be at this point?
Oh, I don't know the evaluations of the property. I would say that they are a cleaned up brownfield site that have been sitting vacant for some time. So the values are probably at the lower level. I would say at the end of the 5 years that the property values would have improved.
Okay. I heard in some earlier discussions that those might be around $550 million in the 2029 timeframe. Do you think that's an accurate assessment?
That could be true. I can't answer to that.
So we would be providing $290 million to the company, and potentially in 2029 another estimated property estimated value of, say, $550 million.
Yes, with 750 jobs in the state of West Virginia with over a $2.5 billion economic impact. Don't forget those numbers. Those are very important too.
Understand. Yeah, and those are from experts, and I can give you a long dissertation on experts and everything, having been around them throughout my life, frankly, in the intelligence arena, and having seen many experts who've failed, so in their estimations. So that's all I have at this time. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, if I could speak to the bill briefly.
Yes, gentleman is recognized.
I would tell everybody here, and having spent a lot of time in my career talking to experts, listening to them, watching how they've had good days and bad days, bad months, bad years, how we've depended upon experts, and those experts have failed us in many cases. So we may have an economic development of $2.5 billion. We may not. I will tell you that the world changes about every 2 to 5 years. I've been studying this for decades. Every 2 to 5 years. If you look back at where we were at in December of 2019 and look at where we're at today, you would see a fundamental difference between how we are living today, what we were planning on doing, everything. COVID, the election of Joe Biden, those things fundamentally changed the world we're in today. It's going to change in 2 years. In 2 years, at a minimum, we're going to see a massive change. You're either going to see a GOP administration that says, yeah, we're done with trillions of dollars of spending and investing into an industry that's trying to destroy our economy, that's trying to destroy our fossil fuels. Or we're going to see a Democrat administration that is frankly going to bury us, bury our economy in green energy in ways that we aren't going to be able to understand. We can't understand at this point. So I would urge tremendous caution as we do this vote, because your vote right now probably will result in $290 million going eventually to this company, and potentially with no significant return. So I would be a no vote on this, and I will be. And by the way, for those people who say, well, we're staying too long, I have the longest drive in this entire house. I'm willing to stay until whenever. And I already told my family I'm heading back. I'll stay until Sunday night. Thank you very much.
Gentleman from the 5th, Doug Fluharty is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Where to start? Where to start? It was stated on the floor earlier that members of the legislature do not work for Secretary Carmichael in the Development Office. And to that I say, thank God. Thank God members of the legislature do not work in the Development Office or for the Secretary, because we wouldn't be here right now. This is shameful. I hope no CEO is watching. I hope the internet's down. Usually is. I hope it's down. Nobody can see this. This is embarrassing. Imagine at the 11th hour, after 16 states competed for this project, 16, and we set a team around, and we said, we're finally going to compete as West Virginians, we're finally going to compete as a state. And we, at the 11th hour, the legislature drops the ball. Could you imagine that? Because that's where we're at. That's what it sounds like over here. I think a few of you want to go start the No Jobs Caucus. It's absurd. You know, we have had investments in the state. Gentleman from the 47th said he was against the bill. The Greenbrier's in his district. The state bailed out the Greenbrier years ago. How's it doing right now? It's doing pretty well. When smart people make smart decisions, good things happen. A bunch of smart people competed for a project, and we're here today to help finalize it. And I'm getting up and hearing all these conspiracy theories. Oh, severance taxes, severance taxes. Let's talk about that for a second. Where do you think that's coming from? Natural gas is booming. It's booming. 20% of our now surplus contributed to natural gas production. Guess where that's coming from? Northern Panhandle. My people up north. We mine coal, we produce gas, we do a lot of things. We have a steel town up there in Weirton. Steel town that is dark and desolate right now, needs a shot in the arm. And that's what this does. The city manager sent us an email, I hope you all received it, and a letter. I'm not going to read the whole letter, but what he said was, this is the best news to hit Weirton in 50 years. In 50 years. And if he's listening to this debate today, he's probably ashamed because he thinks so many legislators are against Weirton coming back, against job production. We talked about whether West Virginians will receive the job. Well, the West Virginia Jobs Act will apply to this work, this construction. Those are construction jobs, good labor union jobs in the Northern Panhandle, be building this facility. Up and down the Northern Panhandle, growing up, my grandfather was a construction worker, my dad, union electrician, and you go up and down the Ohio Valley, Northern Panhandle, and right, everybody tells stories. Worked on that project, and the conversation as the years have gone on is what it used to be. What it used to be in the Northern Panhandle. And not what it can be. This is a what it can be conversation. This is what it can be project. This is something that years later, generations to come, as you travel up and down the Northern Panhandle, you'll point and be proud that we have such a facility, that we have people working, providing for their families. Install that pride again, support this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 86th Second Ward is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I promise I will be the shortest speaker of the day. There's not a soul in here that doesn't understand the saying, not in my backyard, for projects that nobody wants. I see here today, not unless it's in my backyard. If every delegate in here chooses their vote based on how it's going to benefit their district, God help the state of West Virginia. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 29th, Doug Dillon, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've heard a lot of concerns aired here today, and...
Point of order has been raised. Has the gentleman spoken to the bill?
No, I only asked questions earlier.
Chair, the gentleman asked questions. I did not know that the gentleman had spoken. The chair's
I wish to speak to the bill.
Okay. All right, the gentleman's recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've heard a lot of concerns here mentioned today, and I'm not going to go back and rehash everything. Let me just say that when the CEO of a company says that they want to fully retire coal and natural gas, this is a statement made to in an interview with Inc. Incorporated there, the website in 2020. We have to take him seriously. At the same time, and I share the concerns with others from the coal-producing areas of the state, but also when I look at the way that this deal is set up and the very minimal criteria and the thresholds to be able to meet their production requirements and their contractual requirements to be able to receive the full amount of funding. It seems to me that the most likely outcome here is not that they are successful in taking out coal and gas. It seems to me like the most likely outcome here is that this company is able to thread the needle, barely meet the requirements included in the deal, collect the $290 million, and then fold up the next year. That's what it seems like to me, because these criteria are set very low. Now, when I think about what we could do with $290 million around the state, I just can't stop thinking about what people sent me here to do from my district, the thoughts that were on their minds, concerns about the roads, concerns about the water issues, concerns about the broadband, which, by the way, we could have separated out in this. We could have voted on these separately. There's no reason why these have to be in the same bill. I don't know why this body didn't approve that request yesterday. Let me just say, when we talk about why I was sent here, what my voters, why they sent me here specifically, it wasn't to embrace socialism as an approach to economic development. That wasn't it. It wasn't to embrace central economic planning. It wasn't to embrace Bill Gates and this globalist green agenda. It wasn't for any of that. And if I voted for this bill, they would run me out on a rail. And don't be surprised if you go back home and your constituents are less than pleased with you. Don't assume that voting for this means that people are going to welcome you back in your districts. Listen, we're all going to have to give an account for the things we do in this life. Excuses like we have to play the game, that's not going to cut it. We're all going to be held accountable. We can't serve two masters. Think about it. I'll be a no on this. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 20th, Douglas Foster is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know it's been a long day, and I won't take much of your time, but I just want to be very clear and hope you all pay attention to what we're actually voting on here. This isn't about, I'm not going to tell you what way I think you should vote or not, but this is in the MOA, I just got to review it this morning. There's actually 4 phases. The first 3 phases relate to the jobs and the giving of the $290 million investment. So at the end of phase 3, there's the requirement of 350 jobs. And that's when the rest of the $290 million, or the $135 million will be given over from the Economic Development Authority. So 350 jobs for $290 million. Going on from that is the 4th phase, is what I'll call it, is the completion phase. And that's when the property is passed over to the company, which has I would say it's a requirement, but it's not, of 750 jobs. We've heard 750 jobs, but that is only, 350 is the only requirement for the receiving of the money. Once the property's transferred over, it's 750 jobs, but that can be, in sub 4 on page 9, that can be waived by the Economic Development Authority. So 750 jobs is not required. Could be, I'm not saying they would waive that requirement, but it can be waived whenever the property is transferred. So what this is $290 million for 350 jobs. I just wanted to be very clear about what that is, and I appreciate the time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from the 52nd Docket Road seek recognition?
To move to be permitted to speak a second time, primarily in response to other comments made on the floor.
Okay, the gentleman has moved that the rule be suspended to permit debate a second time. Those in favor of that motion will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. This is a rule suspension vote. Those in favor of the motion to suspend the rules to permit debate a second time will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Okay, has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there are 18 ayes, 74 nays, and 8 members absent. Less than two-thirds in the affirmative. The chair declares the motion to suspend the rules lost. Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 2nd, Douglas Teslo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, speaking of things in your backyard, this one is. I'm pleased today to stand here in support of this bill. After years, as I said, I believe yesterday, of people of us in Weirton not really caring whether anybody came there or talked about us or did anything, this is a real change for me. The City of Weirton is looking at this as the beginning of its redevelopment. It is not looking at it as the be-all and end-all and the best thing that can ever happen. The best is yet to come, ladies and gentlemen. The best is yet to come. Why? Iron air batteries are interesting. I believe they work. I think the testimony you've heard here today says they work. But the real payoff for West Virginia is not going to be in that. It's going to be in the development of the infrastructure that will allow manufacturing and that type of thing due to the abundance of natural gas. And if you don't think that I'm going to start working on that immediately, you have another thing coming. Let's talk for a minute about what these batteries do. Are they ever going to be used in the state of West Virginia? Good question. Answer is probably. I would say they're going to be looked at by Berkshire Hathaway. They're going to need some of that storage if they want to optimize their solar panels that we already allowed in this chamber this year. How about Toyota? Toyota has a lot of solar panels, and they will need these batteries. And we will sell, the Weirton Form Energy will sell those batteries to them. What I like the most about this gets me back to the Weirton of old, because these batteries will go all over the country, just like our tin cans used to, just like our steel beams used to. I went down to St. Petersburg, Florida, and one ex-Weirtonite said, "Come down here to the basement, I want to show you something." And he pointed to a beam in St. Petersburg, Florida, and it said Weirton Steel. Made him feel good. It was like he was back home. I have talked to the city manager. There is interest from other companies coming already. I reached out to some of the Form Energy people. They are ready to start working. They've asked for applications for positions, and they've gotten 250 responses already. A large percentage of which are old Weirton Steel people. That's moving forward. I'm excited for that. The people of Weirton are excited for it. Let's talk a little bit about money. $290 million is a lot. There are triggers for the $290 million. And I really appreciate the gentleman from the 42nd bringing up Honda. I don't know if you saw the news today, the News and Sentinel news report. The state of Ohio has just granted Honda $237 million for a 700-job expansion of a battery factory that the delegate alluded to. And that's interesting because that's in addition to the $146 million that they already granted to this company, to Honda. $393 million. To my fellow delegates, this is just an example of what is going on out there right now. That's the way the game's played. So I hope you bear with me. I was going to read the letter from the City Council of Weirton, but I'm not going to belabor this because my computer just went dark and I'd have to put my password in, and all this technical rigmarole is driving me crazy, and I got to talk to these IT people about extending that somewhat. But the gist of the letter is, for years we were a diamond of industry, and now we are a diamond in the rough. We appreciate very much, and we humbly support this bill. First phrase of the first sentence, we humbly support this bill and ask for your support. This is the start of the redevelopment of Weirton. We once again affirm our support and thank you for your efforts in it. I came to this body to try to help the state of West Virginia. Part of what I did was, the people that elected me said, you're a geologist, you understand this shale stuff, and we think that's going to be important. After I told them why the hell would I run for office. Well, we've been successful. We've gone from 250 billion cubic feet to 2.5 trillion. We have a lot of severance tax. It's not all due to me, honestly, I understand that. But I've had a part to play. I was glad to do it. I was glad to help bring Nucor. I voted for the $300 million for Nucor. I voted to let Berkshire Hathaway have 2,200 acres of Ohio River real estate. And it's working to the advantage of West Virginia. There's no question about it. I ask for your support for this bill and hope that you will follow me as we continue our tour of redeveloping and actually reinvigorating the state of West Virginia. And by the way, one last thing. I will always be a major proponent of coal, and I will always be a proponent of this state. So thank you very much for listening, and I ask for your yes vote humbly, just as the City Council of Weirton does. Thank you.
Lady from the 70th, Doug Petito.
I'd like to speak to the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Ladies recognized.
I'm sorry. Since we're expressing opinions, it appears here, I'd like to make my comment, and that is, bottom line, we're looking at a request from our economic development team, who we charged with going out and finding opportunities for West Virginia. Today, West Virginia is on the map, and the world is watching. It sends a bad message to the people out there that are working on putting together these opportunities if they can't bring their deals home. And I think we need to support the people that we appointed or we authorized to go out and find opportunities. We're cutting their throats if we do this. And I support this bill, and I urge its passage.
Gentleman from 97, Doug Hardy, to close debate on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to be brief. I don't know what else I could say on this House floor today that hasn't been said within the past 2 days. There has been very vigorous debate on this House floor, and I appreciate that. I respect every member on this floor. We don't always agree, but we do have very vigorous debate, and I do respect that. I want to have just a few points of clarifications. There was a few of my friends that said that they did not know about the MOA and did not know the information that was in there, and I apologize for that, but that's your own neglect. The MOA is a public document and could have been viewed. Secretary Carmichael also came to our caucus and spoke to our caucus, gave us very detailed information. Senator Carmichael also came to the Finance Committee and gave sworn testimony. There was 3 opportunities there for you to inform yourself. Secondly, I've heard delegates talk about They didn't come down here to be investment bankers, and they didn't come down here to invest in startups. Well, let's just talk about a few of those. Greenbrier County, the Great Barrel Company, startup. You got another company, Mountaintop Beverage, Mon County, new startup. The SBA, Economic Development, and the Secretary work very diligently all over this state for new businesses, to help businesses grow that are here and have proven themselves time and time again. Let's talk about a few of those successes. Putnam County, Toyota. There was definitely money invested by this state to bring Toyota here. Let's talk about Mason County, Nucor. A lot of jobs. Mason County is going to change. Me and my friend beside me have been talking about it. Big changes in Mason County, Nucor, economic development, put money up for that project. P&G in my area. I've heard people talk about, well, all these people going to live in West Virginia? I can't tell you how many jobs that Procter & Gamble has right now, but it's a lot. And I can tell you all, they do not all live in the Eastern Panhandle, West Virginia. There are people that come in from Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Virginia to work at Procter & Gamble. Lastly, let's talk about Mon County. Mon County's had a few economic wins up that way. Got an electric bus company coming. I think there's an electric boat company coming. Economic development. The Secretary has worked on that. We'll talk about all those deals. Zero collateralization in those deals. Zero. Those companies fold, they go away, our investment's gone. Now, I know a lot of you don't like this company, you don't like what they stand for, and you don't like some of their responses. But I will tell you, if you go to any of these large companies, you're going to see those key words that you don't want to see, because it's just part of their language. So I'm going to close with just a few more thoughts here. If we don't want to be in this game, we're going to bury our heads in the sand. The country's going to pass us by. My friend from Raleigh said, this is today's game. This is the way things work. If you're going to be involved in new economic development in your state, you better have someone out there hustling for you, and you better be willing to be able to get involved in and actively bringing those companies to your state. So I made a commitment to myself when I came down here this year that I was going to ask myself some questions about legislation. A lot of times we run some, red meat bills in here, and we run some stuff that I ask myself, do we really need this? But the commitment I've made to myself is, when we run a piece of legislation and I look at it and I want to be involved with it, is, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish in this house? And I think we are trying to accomplish economic development. We are trying to broaden our base. We are trying to grow our economy. Most importantly, provide good jobs for our citizens. We're trying to keep our best and brightest here. We're trying to bring new people to our state, educated people to our state that are going to build into our tax base and grow our economy. Those are the questions that we ask ourselves when we're in this body and we look at legislation and we're trying to move the needle of the state of West Virginia. So with that being said, Mr. Speaker, I ask for a green vote on this bill and encourage everyone to vote yes for moving West Virginia forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 69 ayes, 25 nays, and 6 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2882, making a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Economic Development.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman from the 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill take effect from its passage.
The gentleman from the 96th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of that motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 79 ayes, 15 nays, 6 members absent, 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill effective for passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3130, creating the Coalfields Energy Research and Economic Development Authority.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, Gentleman from 68, Doug Phillips, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 3130 creates the West Virginia Coalfields Energy Research and Economic Development Authority, establishes a declaration of purpose, establishes the exercise of powers benefiting the citizens of the state, and establishes the authority will perform essential government functions, exempts the authority from taxation, provides for certain definitions, provides for the authority's composition, terms of appointment, compensation of members, compensation of expenses and costs, and removal of members, provides for the authority's powers and duties, mandates reporting, and provides confidentiality for certain information. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? The gentleman from the 29th, Doug Dillon's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to speak to the bill. We've seen many of the sponsors of this bill, the original sponsors, asked to remove their names. There's a reason for that. The bill appears on its face to be aimed toward helping those areas which have suffered in the aftermath of the environmental war on coal. However, this bill contains no provisions that actually would benefit those areas specifically. This bill actually opens up the entire state of West Virginia to more of these green energy subsidized projects that I guess we just voted for. So if you like that, go ahead and vote for it. I'll be a strong no on this. That's all. Thank you.
Is there debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 70 ayes, 23 nays, and 7 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3130, creating the Coalfields Energy Research and Economic Development Authority.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3145, recognizing the Commission on Uniform State Laws as a presumptive provider of continuing legal education.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 55th, Doug Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Pretty self-explanatory here. The bill further recognizes that session attendance at its annual meetings as a continuing legal education credit for the commissioners that we ask to attend on our state's behalf to the Commission of Uniform State Laws to keep us in compliance. I urge passage of the bill.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There were 93 ayes, 0 nays, and 7 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3145, recognizing the Commission on Uniform State Laws as a presumptive provider of continuing legal education.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2075 to provide a means to classify when medications should be continued or stopped for patients.
Gentleman 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
Are there objections? No objections are heard. Action will be postponed one day. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2621 relating generally to bail bondsmen.
Are there amendments? Are there amendments?
Delegates Burkhammer and Householder move to amend the bill on page 1 by striking everything after the
enactment. To having the amendment explained in lieu of having it read? Okay, if not, gentleman from the 64th, Doug Burkhammer, to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a technical cleanup. What you're going to see in this strike and insert is the bill that passed banking and insurance and also passed judiciary, but there were some technical issues within the computer that not everything and all the changes were encapsulated in that. I urge adoption.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment just explained by the gentleman 64th, gentleman 51st, Doug Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge acceptance of this amendment. It simply does clarify the technical problems. Urge passage.
Those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 2899, repealing 2 sections of code relating to gas utility rates.
Are there amendments? If not,
yes.
Okay.
Delegate Fluharty moves to amend the bill on page 1, following the article.
Are there objections to allowing the gentleman to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read? Okay, if not, gentleman from the 5th, Doug Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a simple amendment that I think everybody should be in support of, and quite frankly, it's about time. You know, month after month, you see headline that the PSC's increasing utility rates left and right. I was doing a quick search over here, and electricity rates have increased 160% over a 15-year period. And in 2022, a combined $131 million was approved through rate increases. In 1983, the legislature took some bold action. And they said, you know what? We're not going to allow that to happen anymore. And we're going to say for 1 year, we're going to freeze rates for electricity and gas. It was gas back then. I'm doing it for both electricity and gas. Freezing rates for 1 year. What we're doing here is repealing a section of the code that we had back in 1983 that allowed us to freeze rates. And I say in 2023, why aren't we doing that again? Let's freeze the rates. We have the power to do so. This is the first time I've seen that we've had power like this. Why repeal the code? Put it back in there and say for 1 year from enactment, just 1 year, we're going to freeze it. Makes sense to me. It should make sense to all of you, and in particular, makes sense to your constituents. So support the amendment, and I call for the yeas and nays. And I right to close. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman 22nd, Doug Linville.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman 96, Doug Householder.
Is the amendment germane?
The chair did consult with the parliamentarian, did review the bill, did review the amendment. The bill is a one-sentence bill that is a repeal bill. It does not open the entire code, and therefore the chair will rule that the amendment is not germane and will sustain the point of order. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3111, creating infrastructure-ready jurisdictions.
For what purpose does the gentleman 42nd seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I know it's a little out of turn, but I'd ask unanimous consent to return to introductions.
Okay, are there objections? Okay, there are no objections. Gentleman is recognized.
With us here on the House floor are 2 special former members of the House, 2 of our great friends, former Delegate Dan Greer, now Judge, and former Delegate, now Commissioner Jeff Pack, if the House would make them feel welcome.
Next bill on second reading. Did the clerk read Bill 3111? Okay, bill will be advanced to third reading.
House Bill 3199, relating to removing the requirement that an ectopic pregnancy be reported.
Gentleman from 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action 1 day.
Are there objections? If there are no objections, action will be postponed 1 day. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 3268, add protections for West Virginia residents who reside out of state for certain time periods from non-renewal of licenses and registration.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3306, relating to the organizational structure of the Office of Drug Control Policy.
Are there objections? Or amendments? Maybe objections. Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3307, establishing the West Virginia-Ireland Trade Commission.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2005, establishing the dual enrollment pilot program to be administered by the Higher Education Policy Commission and the Council for Community and Technical College Education in conjunction with the State Board of Education.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2006, relating to reorganizing the Department of Health and Human Resources.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2309 to require the Division of Forestry to create an online renewal process no later than July 1st, 2023.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2540, Travel Insurance Model Act.
All right, bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2605 relating to Good Samaritan Act, Good Samaritan Law.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2817 relating to Public Service Commission jurisdiction over alternative fuel for motor vehicles.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3044 relating to the annual renewal fee for limited video lottery terminal permits.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3098 to eliminate the West Virginia General Summative Assessment and replace it with a formative assessment given 3 times a year.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3113 requiring high school students to complete course of study in personal finance.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3122 permitting certain types of rifles using an encapsulated propellant charge that loads from the breech.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3210 relating to the performance of installation of propane gas systems.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3261 relating to social workers' qualifications.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3272 relating to the operation of private trust companies in West Virginia.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3302 to recognize unborn child as distinct victim in a DUI causing death.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3311 relating to wine alcohol by volume as compared to beer.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3318 relating to location of services provided by the Workforce Development Board as related to the one-stop delivery system.
The bill will be advanced. Are there other bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Gentleman 96th.
For our colleagues Bridges, Clark, Ellington, Jeffries, McGeehan, and E. Pritt.
Are there objections to leaves being granted? No objections are heard. Leaves of absence will be granted. Introductions. Gentleman with the 54th, Doug Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I see we are joined by some friends of ours in the South Gallery from the Nicholas County Democratic Executive Committee. If they would stand as I say their name. Pam Tucker-Klein, Terry Rodabaugh, Elizabeth Beckett. And if they would stand, and would the body please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman with the 57th, Doug Scaff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to be the first to introduce to the world, on behalf of my colleague, Delegate Pritt, who's not with us today, their newborn baby in the middle of the night, and her name is Charlotte Pritt. Let's give her a round of applause.
Other introductions. Miscellaneous business. Gentleman 96th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move subject to announcement that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Monday, February 13th.
Are there announcements? Gentleman 96th.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Rules will meet Monday morning at 10:45 a.m. behind the chamber.
Gentleman 97th, Doug Hardy.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Finance will meet Monday, February 13th at 3 p.m. in the Finance Committee room. The agenda will be posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman 51st, Doug Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Judiciary will not meet today, notwithstanding our high aspirations. However, we will meet Monday morning at 9:30 a.m. in the committee meeting room. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman 68, Doug Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet Monday, February 13th at 1 p.m. in the committee room. Republican members will caucus in my office at 12:45. Thank you.
Gentleman 43rd, Doug Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet today, 30 minutes following floor session at 12:55 in the Education Committee room. The agenda is posted. Furthermore, the committee will meet again on Monday, February the 13th at 2 p.m., and the agenda will be posted.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question is on the motion that the House stand adjourned at 11 o'clock Monday. Those in favor of the motion will please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. We are adjourned at 11 a.m. Monday.